over in a minute.
In a minute?
In a few.
Yeah. Comes, it goes, move on.
Yeah.
Like I said, it was going to be a contested step up. Contested number one.
Yeah.
No one else is right now.
Yeah.
So it's like, maybe yours.
I mean, no one else is invited to this, right?
Oh, the city can come,
Oh, can they?
anybody can come, it's an open meeting.
Oh my gosh, I'm so
Anytime you
glad I
have-
told my family.
Anytime you have 2 or more councilmen, you have to announce the meeting. You're
Yeah,
not
no,
allowed to.
it's regular.
Because that all has
That's
to
a
be
state
public.
statute.
It's a regular plan, sure.
And state law explicitly says that the interviews have to be public.
Yeah, you don't have
Also.
that, it's
Yeah,
open,
yeah.
it's open for the go, if you still want to come.
They changed that.
Oh, did they, what did they change it to?
Well, it used to be that you could have a discussion in private and then just come out and vote. And they changed it.
Well, they just still have to ask their meeting quietly though. There's no meeting.
Oh, yeah, no, you still have to
You
come out
have
and
their
yeah.
meeting, whether it's privately or
Right,
regularly.
right. And you have to have annual training on that.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I'll figure it out.
I'm curious to see what 4 o'clock.
Elizabeth knows.
What?
Who dropped?
I'm sorry.
Who dropped?
I had to look at this.
No idea, I saw
The Zoom, this one person in Florida.
the Zoom, so we did all that afterwards?
Yeah, after all that discussion, I don't think there's nothing, there wasn't a meeting.
Well, the mayor was pretty much like saying, oh yeah, there's not a good idea, it's not going to work out.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting.
Well, I think they have, so they have it to look like to show. Because there's some people who don't understand that you're here till midnight, 1 or 2 a.m. When I said
watching everything you do. We want to welcome you out to the special Highland Council meeting tonight on September 12th. It's at 6:03 p.m. We did hold a special emergency closed session tonight at 5:15, so we did start our meeting then, and so this will be a continuation. But because we just went right into closed session, we will begin with a word of prayer by Councilmember Brittany Bills, and I will lead you in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our dear Father in heaven, we are so grateful tonight for the opportunity we have to gather as a city and talk about ideas that are important to us that will affect our city. We ask for Thy Spirit to be with us tonight as we meet, that we will be able to, as council members, make good decisions and have clear and fair open minds. And we ask Thee to please bless the candidates, that they will be able to express their ideas and vision for Highland clearly. Again, we're so grateful for everything that we've been given. We're grateful for our public safety and ask Thee to bless them in everything that they do for our city. And we ask this in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
If you'll please stand with me to the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We want to thank everyone for being here. And I'm just going to share, as I looked at the flag and looked at the stripes and that, it's the process tonight that makes America. This is our freedoms. We are going to be electing those who are here with us by your elected officials. This is the process, the democratic process, that we've all went and fought for, and we all go forth and we pledge to the flag. So thank you for being here and being willing to bring forth your name as our vacancy here in the City Council. Tonight, unfortunately, some of you will not be selected as a council member, but we have some other areas of the city that we're needing some help in. So I want to maybe share other areas, if you're not maybe chosen tonight, that maybe help get the city and help with the city. There'll be some opportunities on the Planning Commission coming up, so there'll be some forms. We'd love to have you, it's volunteer forms to have you fill out if you're interested. We'll have some openings on the Planning Commission. The Arts Council would be helpful to also be there. We have our Library Board, we have our Parks Committee, and also with the Flame. So if there's some areas that, once again, it starts, if you're not selected, there's other areas that you might be able to help us serve in the city. We sure could use your help. We appreciate you bringing forth your name at this time. I'd like to share a little bit about what we're doing here tonight and kind of a little bit what's kind of processed during the day. Do you have something, Scott? Yeah, we'll kind of get into that. Okay, with that, what position are we trying to select tonight? Sarah Peterson terms, we are choosing a council member to replace Sarah Peterson, Councilmember Sarah Peterson, who has moved out of the city and moved to Atlanta. This term will end on December 2025. So it's just for 2 years and 3 months is the term that's being selected for tonight. There has been some events that have happened during the day today that we'd like to make you aware of. At 12 p.m., I was able to have a conversation with Councilmember Tim Ball. I'm sorry. Tim, unfortunately, had to move out of Highland here about a month ago. And so at this time, he resides in American Fork. According to the state code, a current council member cannot be outside the city for 60 days. It was not shown intent to be able to come back. In my conversation with Tim Ball today, Tim is not sure how he's going to be able to come back into Highland. So at this time, Tim Ball is not going to be participating with us in the vote, and there's now going to be another council vacancy. We appreciate Tim Ball's service. I'm sorry. It's with that, with the conversation and talking with Tim and calling out, and our attorney talked with Tim, it's kind of evident that we now need to make a change there also. How does that affect tonight's vote? Tonight's vote is specifically for Sarah Peterson's opening. It will not affect anything with Tim Ball's vacancy. That will be decided and probably discussed after the meeting, after our selection time tonight. We will go through and discuss how that will happen. With this once again, with this new information, Tim Ball is no longer eligible to be a Highland City Council member and to participate in tonight's vote. Tim, you'll notice this here. I appreciate you being here for us, Tim. With that, there's only 3 council members that will be doing the vote tonight, and I'd like to share with how that will happen. The voting matrix will happen as follows. We will first have, we'll have the candidates come up, do a 2-minute intro. You'll then have each of the council members and the mayor will ask, each person gets to get to have 1 question. We're asking that you respond within 1 minute. We have a lot of applicants. We figured that if everyone takes their time, it could be also all the time up to 3 hours, just in that first round of nominations. So we'll go through that first round. Now with that, I forgot there are 2 candidates that have withdrawn tonight. And so I thought we'd probably, before I get too much further, we've had Brian Sargent has withdrawn his name tonight as a nominee as that, and Doug Courtney. So Doug, you're probably aware, has also, his name is on the ballot to go forth here in November. Doug has decided to withdraw his name for tonight's selection. So once again, let's go through the voting matrix. We will go forth with the nominations, 2-minute intro, 1-minute answer. There then will be a voting. We'll ask each of the council members, which will only be 3, to choose 2 names to move forward. Those will then go over here to our attorney, Rob Patterson, and our city recorder, Stephanie Cottle. They then will look and they will share who is moving on to the first round of voting. At the first round of voting, there will be new questions that will be asked, and you have 2 minutes to respond in that first round of voting. If during the first round of voting, if any candidate gets two council members to vote for them, they are now the member of the council. There's probably a question about how can 2 council members be the thing, because if in the city council meeting, it takes 3 council members to make it, to change any of the ordinances or laws or things that way. The state code has contemplated that there might be some vacancies that happen in a city council, and so based off what our attorney is advising us, it will only take 2 council members tonight to move the candidate in to fill Sarah Peterson's vacancy. So with that, we will go through, if we can, in that first round of voting, if there's a person that gets 2 votes, they will be in. If there's a person that only gets, if everyone gets 1 vote from a council, I then as the mayor will either choose the vote myself, I either can choose one that they did not bring forward, or I can then vote for one of the individuals, one of the council members brought forward. That person would automatically move on to the second round, and then there would be a coin flip that would happen on the other, if there's 2 of them that tie for 1. I'm not sure we'll get to that point. It'll probably be resolved possibly by that. But with that, it is time now to go ahead and move forward. Once again, with the election coming up, with some of the things coming about, we've had 4 individuals. This is for the election in November for the 3 open seats in December. With the candidacy of Tim Ball at this time moving out of the city, it appears, from what we're understanding, we've reached out to the state, but it appears by state code, Tim also would not be eligible to run for election. So with that means there was only 3 other individuals, and so those 3 individuals would move on, unless if there's some individuals that would like, there is a candidacy that is the write-in that they can do until September 18th. But with that, let's go ahead, and we would like to go move into our city council vacancy. We have a list, by the way, where your name will be called up. The way it's done is the state, when they do election, they kind of give an order how your name will appear on the ballot. So they have each year it's a little different. So when you're applying, you don't know if you're an A or a B, if you're going to be the top one. So this is based off of how the state has come up with your name would appear on the ballot. We're using the same criteria for how you'll come appear up to the council. The first question will be asked we'll have you first introduce yourself, then we'll have you come up. Actually, we want them to introduce and then have a question. That might save some time. We'll have you introduce yourself, and then our first question will be given by Kim Riddell of you, and then we'll move down, and then we will rotate. Each one of us will have a different question. So the first person to come up and introduce themselves is Jeremy Meldrum. So Jeremy, please come up, and then we'll ask you some questions.
My name is Jeremy Meldrum. My family and I, we moved here from Cedar Hills about 8 years ago. And the reason we chose Highland was I was familiar with it from my aunt and uncle living here since the late 70s. And it's always been a place that I've loved to come. I like the atmosphere of Highland, how it is just a quiet bedroom community, and that it's safe. My kids ride to Macy's to get their ice cream. My wife teaches at the high school and coaches at the high school, and we've loved raising our 5 kids here. I have 3 that are still here, one at Lone Peak, one at Mountain Ridge, and one at Highland Elementary. And the reason I'm applying for this, the reason I want to be on the city council, is I want to do what I can to help keep Highland Highland. I've seen how other cities are changing and the way things are going, and I want to help keep Highland the way it is. It's a little piece of heaven, a little piece of paradise that I get to come home to every night, and I hope to be able to keep it that way. As far as a profession, I've been in healthcare for about 15 years. I manage nursing homes, and I enjoy being able to serve others, and that's why I went into healthcare, and that's why I want to do this.
Okay, thank you. Kim, your first question.
Nice to meet you. My first question for you is, what qualifications and experience do you bring to the role of city council member that make you a suitable candidate for this position?
I think I've been a good citizen my whole life. I pay attention to politics, I pay attention to local politics, and I want to get more involved in what goes on. I've started coming to city council meetings and seeing the impact that you're able to have on the city council versus just voting with a ballot, and I want to be able to have that impact. I think I bring a clear state of mind to the city council, and I have those values that I think Highland is looking for, the things Highland professes, and so that's what I would bring.
Okay, thank you. If you could change one thing in the city, what would it be?
This goes back to the one of the city council meetings I attended, and there were a lot of people here for that city council meeting about alcohol, and it would be to try and get rid of any ambiguities that we have in our codes or in our laws to make things more concrete, so people know what they can and what they can't do.
So what is the certified tax rate and why is it important to the city budget?
I don't know.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for coming and thanks for being first. I know that's not easy. You mentioned that you like what Highland is and want to keep it the quiet bedroom community. How do you think we balance the needs of kind of old Highland and new Highland, people who are moving in and maybe want to see something different?
I think people move to a place, they look at it first, they research it, and they move to a place because it is a certain way. They don't move to a place hoping it's going to change. I know when we looked for places to live, we specifically did that when we moved to Highland because we hoped it wouldn't change. We liked that it was quiet. We liked that there weren't a lot of businesses. It was just a nice, safe, quiet place. There are plenty of cities that are looking for that, so-called progress with huge growth and lots of businesses, and I think progress can be looked at differently. I see when there's progress, more lights, more traffic, more crime, versus the peace and quiet and a nice stress-free lifestyle.
Thank you, Jeremy. Okay, thank you. Our next candidate, and we appreciate it. It's hard sometimes with the first. We don't know if you get the same questions. So be aware, they're not all the same questions. Each council will change the question. It will be Landon Densley.
Good evening, distinguished councilman's mayor.
Just make sure it's in the mic.
Right there? Okay, I'm Landon Densley. I've been a resident of the Valley of Utah Valley for about almost my whole life. I was raised in Provo. I've been here in Highland for about 7 years with my family. I have a family of 8 kids, and 2 are on missions for my church. The other, I have kids in high school, junior high, and elementary schools here. So I've got a lot of skin in the game of what goes on and the things that are around us. I've been an emergency manager for 20 years, certified certified emergency manager since about 2006. I've served communities across the country in helping them recover from events and disasters, and really defining about who they are and who they want to be. Once that event happens, funding streams open up for communities, and to really kind of figure out, do we want to continue on the path we're on? What do we want to do with these areas that have been taken out? And watched very difficult situations and help those cities mentally recover as well as start on paths forward. With that, it's given me a great opportunity to see going through the whole process with the city councils and kind of coming up with ideas and having city meetings. In Galveston, Texas, we had I think we had estimated 40% of the community coming to our meetings. We had a committee of 300 that we were able to organize and meet and come up with pathways forward for the community. I've met with small, Galena, Alaska communities. Galveston was fairly large. Also been, served probably about 30 different communities across the country, all the way from the Midwest to the South. That gives you an idea of who I am.
Okay. So I will now go first. So Landon, there's some residents of the Highland that came to the council about concerns about traffic issues. What would you do to mitigate some of those concerns, and what would be some of your recommended changes about traffic?
Okay, well, with traffic, I live right off of Temp Highway, and just a few weeks ago, lost one of my friends and neighbors that ran into a truck that was parked on the side of the road. It's a real issue. We're losing far too many people on that highway, and the introduction of the one single light that we've had on that highway has cut down on speed, which is welcome. It does give me a light in between myself and the grocery store, but it's a welcome one. These are things that we've got to look at the safety issues and recommendations coming out of the police departments and where they're looking at. There's lots of different varying ideas that communities use to slow things down, and a lot of different mitigation methods. A light's one of them, speed bumps are others. But really being in research and understanding from the police side of the standpoint of what they're seeing is what I would like to look at more.
So we're part of the Lone Peak Safety District,
yes,
which is the police and the fire. How is that funded?
It's a joint with Alpine and Highland, joint funding is from what I'm aware of, and it comes through taxes. Do you want any further?
Thank you. We neighbor several different cities, but sometimes our residents want something different than maybe the neighbors in neighboring cities want. Either using a specific example or a general idea, how would you work with neighboring cities when they maybe have different ideas than us?
The cities have mutual benefits for each other, give and take. Obviously, we have one with the Safety Commission with Alpine and Highland coming together. Cedar Hills went a different direction. They with American Fork, and but we all tied together. There's different benefits. For example, Cedar Hills has youth programs, and they use a lot of the fields in both Alpine and Highland, and working in that give and take. Since we don't have it, we give and take from them to be able to use that. And Cedar Hills doesn't charge us an upcharge like American Fork does, and we have a better relationship with them.
Currently, the state, one of their big hot topics is affordable housing, and they are working with local cities to address this as well by issuing certain mandates in order for us to comply with providing affordable housing. What do you think Highland should do with these mandates, and how can we as a city provide affordable housing as stipulated by the state?
I'm not aware of the exact code what the state's looking for. I know that there are funding streams and avenues open for when we do condensed housing, that grants and different things we can get and things that open up when we have some of those areas. Affordable housing can mean different things to different people. There are areas that we have done, and we have more condensed housing, like around where we sit today. There's also been a few areas that are getting more densely populated over by the high school. And to continue to look for those type of areas, to be able to hold the builders to when they say we're going to do affordable housing, to maybe have more clearly define what they mean. When we get that in there, would be things that I would look at.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next one is Nicole De La Vega. Did I say that right, Nicole?
Yes, you did.
Woo-hoo! She told me like Zorro.
You said it perfectly.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor Osler and esteemed council members. I am Nicole Della Vega. I have been an active member in the community of Highland for 24 years. I have raised my 6 kids here in the safety of our little bedroom community. I have watched it evolve and grow from the one flashing light at Country Corner to what I can't even count how many lights we have now. I bring with me to you experience as a member of the military. I bring with me 27 years experience as a registered nurse. The last year and a half of that time I have served as an assistant professor as well as a clinical instructor for a university close by. In that role, I do sit on several boards and commissions where I do have to make collaborative decisions with unbiased opinion and integrity. I also bring with me experience for 4.5 years. I have sat on the Board of Trustees for Lumen Scholar Institute, which has...
Which institute again?
Lumen Scholar Institute. It is on the border of Linden and Orem. It's a small charter school which has grown actually quite successfully, partially from the governance of our board. I absolutely love the city that I live in, not so much some of the changes that have taken place, but yes, many of the changes that have taken place. I plan on continuing to grow my family here. I am currently enrolled in a family nurse practitioner program, which once I graduate, I will also still serve in this community as a healthcare provider. And my kids continue to grow here, evolve here, live here, love here. I think that's all I've got.
Going first. Can you tell me what an enterprise fund is and if the city has any?
I cannot and I do not know.
Yeah, so one of the things we've been discussing recently as a council is whether or not we should hire a lobbyist for the city. What do you think about that idea?
I would like to have, if I had to make that decision, I would like to have more education on what that would entail on our part and their part, but I think anybody that would serve as an advocate for our city would be a positive role, so unless heard otherwise, I would say that's a good idea.
If you have an agenda item and 3/4 of the audience has showed up to voice their opinion against that agenda item, how would you vote?
Oftentimes, as a board member for the school, we have had parents come to us with agenda items that they don't agree with discussion of the board. It's the betterment of the whole instead of the opinion of the few that are expressing their opinion against it. So I would have to base my decision on what is actually the best decision for the city.
Okay. Nicole, you mentioned that you saw some concerns or changes. What are some of those, and what would you do about those as a council member?
I don't think there's anything me personally as a council member could change by myself, but I think some of the changes, like the negative impact of traffic, I think that those are things that are probably in the role of being addressed. I think we're growing more quickly than what we anticipated. Sometimes I feel like the infrastructure for our city wasn't initially prepared to handle how big we have become so quickly. I do know that we do have other things that are even growing more, like the development that's coming up behind, Little Caesars. I would need more information on the impact that we are anticipating before I would be able to say what I think should be changed. Like my opinion of that development over there at first wasn't such positive. But after hearing more from being in a city meeting, I understand why the growth is necessary.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, our next candidate will be, is it Helen or Angelie
Yes.
Taylor?
Helen Angelie Taylor. Okay, well, I'm super happy to be here. I'm sad to hear about one of the council members having to resign early. That's unfortunate. But I'm here to talk about why I want to be on Highland City Council. So let me just give a little background. My mother has been actually retired from city government. Like my whole life, since I was in 7th grade till she retired, it was always city government. And she was the city recorder. Sometimes she worked in the police department. Sometimes she works in the court. Sometimes she had administrative, secretarial jobs in the front. But I listened to these city council meetings my whole life growing up, from 7th grade on, and I took a big interest in politics. My mom would record them on a little tape recorder, and then she'd play back and write notes for herself about the council meetings, or like type them up, because that was during the time that she was the recorder when she would type them. But I just developed this interest of how politics works, how city council works, and it was just like finding my calling, just something I've always wanted, something that I've always been interested in. I'm active currently in city and state politics. I love news. I love all of those things, current events. I'm very, very like interested in it. It's my calling. I'm also an artist. I do oil painting. I love landscaping. I've worked as an event planner, especially for political events. And I've worked as in PR for political PACs in the past, and some fundraising as well for that. So that's kind of my background. And I moved to Highland 4 years ago with my family. I was living in Lehigh, but we started my kids at American Heritage over by the temple. And we found that their best friends all lived in Highland. That was like the neighborhood everybody wanted to be in. So we moved to Viewpoint for my kids to live close to their friends, and we've been there for 4 years.
Thank you. Brittany, I think you have the first question.
I do. Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm
Good. So one of the problems that we run into, or issues we run into in this city, is balancing the rights of kind of the minority or a small group of people versus kind of what the larger group needs or wants. How would you balance the rights of the individual or the minority versus the rights of the majority?
Well, I'm going to start by saying I trust my judgment. I feel like I'm fair to listen to both sides. There's always two sides of a story, and sometimes the best decision is a compromise in the middle, and sometimes it's just not. And I trust my opinion after listening to both sides of what I think is the best decision, and also what I think would be the best decision for the city. I would weigh in the factors of like, first of all, like, what is it, a financial problem? Is it like a community issue? Is it roads? Like, I look at all of that, and I'd weigh in I don't know everything, so I would ask a lot of questions to the people who are more knowledgeable than I am, and try and make the best decision for the overall benefit of the majority. I don't want to ignore a minority. I will definitely take in their concerns. I mean, sometimes they have valid points that I've overlooked, and that's my job, is to make sure, if I was a councilwoman, to make sure that I am being fair to everyone and really weigh that decision carefully.
Okay. So we recently did an economic report on our city finances, and we found that despite historic growth in taxable sales throughout the state, Highland's taxable sales per capita is one of the lowest in the benchmark comparison, and in the county, it ranked 16 out of 17 of the communities, essentially meaning we are leaking to other communities an estimated $435 million of taxable sales. With that in mind, I would like to ask, what measures will you take to promote economic development and job creation in our city?
Okay, so you mean you're kind of like behind everybody, all the other cities, as far as how much you can bring in, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I know that there's lots of business development. There's some of the, high density housing has room for restaurants. I know you guys have been talking about the restaurant option. That was part of like the alcohol decision. I personally think that would be fantastic. As a Highland City
member. I've only enjoyed the development like over by Provo when they redid the University Mall and they made it really nice and it was very attractive and they brought in some really nice sitting areas and restaurants and things. Like I'm not against that. I think Highland could use it. We don't have it right now, but it's also a charm of Highland is not having some of those things. And you would have to weigh in the amount of traffic that's going to bring, like how is that going to affect, you know, can we really afford all of these new businesses coming in on all of the, you know, people wanting to come and enjoy it. You have to kind of weigh it, figure out how you're going to do that with traffic.
Okay, recently in the last couple of city council meetings and over the past year, the council has had a proposal by a company by the name of, or a sports league called Surf Soccer to go and lease some of the city fields.
Correct.
What
I
is
know
your
about
feeling
that.
of what would be your recommendation as a council member how to move forward?
Okay, so I didn't mention this, but I have 4 children. 3 of them are boys. They all loved playing soccer growing up. They've since like dropped off that as they've gotten older. But I would love it because one of the worst things about being a soccer mom is having how far you have to drive to these games and how far you have to, you know, you want to love your kid, you want to support their dreams, but if I could have it closer to me, it would make my life as a member of the city so much easier to have close soccer fields here. I know that the closest, that you guys have some kind of over by the junior high, if I'm correct, like that's like where they've been playing over by Timpanogos High School. There's some fields over there. I see the kids over there playing lacrosse a lot over by the high school on that field area, so I don't know like if lacrosse can use it too. I don't think that it's fair to just give it to one sport, but at the same time, I know that they said that they were gonna fund it. They were gonna like had a great like business model of how they wanted to do it. I was really interested in the idea just because I don't like having to drive so far, but those are my thoughts on it. I'm interested in it. I would look closely at that.
So excluding the fees we charge for utilities, the city charges 2 fees. Can you tell me what those are?
Not utilities. I can't tell you off the top of my head, but I can guess if you want me to, or you can tell me. I kind of want to know. All of these financial questions that you've asked that nobody has known, I've thought to myself, how come nobody has asked him the answer? Like, I just want to know what they are. Like, tell me, what is it?
I'm going to make a little comment.
Oh, okay.
I think it's one of the most important things we do as a council, and I'm not trying to be obnoxious, and I don't want people to hate me, but one of the most important things we do as a council is the budget.
Correct.
And some of these things I've asked are basic things about the budget, and, you know, no one's been able to answer anything. So we have 2 main fees, and you pay them every month on your bill. And I bet other people can say, but it's the road fee that we charge $18.50 and the Lone Peak safety fee that we pay every month. So, you know, I just think if people are going to be on the council, they should have at least kind of reviewed a little bit on city budget things.
I 100% agree. I felt very inadequate listening to these financial questions and not knowing the answers. And if I happened to be the councilwoman, I would definitely like want all of you to lead me, guide me, teach me as I learn, because it's a lot, you know, it's like drinking from a fire hose every time you take a new job. And so that's what I would look to as my leadership, to be like, okay, here's the plan. I'd go home and I'd study it, and I'd make sure that I came back with progress every day and that I can pick it all up. I feel like I'm a fast learner and I'd want to learn. So
sounds good.
So we have a wonderful citizens budget, and you can look at it.
We should have passed it. I got somebody.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Our next candidate to come up is Sherry Kramer. Our first question for Sherry will be for Kim.
Hello, Mayor. Hello, Council. I apologize. I'm going to read this so I can get this in pretty quickly. My name is Sherry Kramer. My husband, Ron, and I have 6 children, 2 grandchildren. Our youngest child is a senior at Lone Peak High School. I've lived in Highland here for 11 and a half years, and prior to that, we lived in American Fork for 15. So I've lived in this area for a total of 27 years, and I've loved it. I'm passionate about serving my community. I've been a community activist for over 20 years in both American Fork and Highland. co-founding a group called Parents for Parks, Trails, and Open Space in 2001, which brought awareness to the City Council of the lack of parks on the northwest side of American Fork. We helped raise over $20,000 that was used to fund a playground at Hunter Park, which was the park that was created from our efforts. I've served in PTSAs at our local schools and also on community councils. I even took a turn serving on the PTSA over at Mountain Ridge High School as the PTA president. I've served in local government. I learned much about development codes and variances while serving on the Board of Adjustments in American Fork. I then had the opportunity to serve on the American Fork City Council from 2007 to 2011 and thoroughly enjoyed my time there. I learned a lot about local government, served on many committees, and was able to get some items passed that hopefully still benefit that community today. I have the time, the dedication to this community, and the experience needed to make this transition a smooth one. And if given the chance for this, and if chosen for this position and given the chance, I will do my very best to keep the Highland Vision Statement at the forefront as I make decisions for this community. Thank you.
Okay. First question for Sherry will be Kim.
Hi, Sherry.
Hi.
Can you share your vision for the city's future, and what specific policies or initiatives will you champion to achieve that vision?
So that's sort of an easy one because it's a beautiful place already, and the vision statement that we have in Highland is wonderful, and I agree with it completely. And I will continue to fight for large lots, wide open spaces, trails, parks, things like that. And some of the things that I would like to work on are consistencies in our development code and things like that. I was listening to the Planning Commission the other night, and they were talking about doing a revision on the general plan, and that hasn't been done, I think, in 15 years, since 2008. And so I'm excited about that. That's an opportunity that you all have to go through things and just make sure there's consistencies and that is still the vision for the city. And one of the other things I would like to look at are impact fees, and I noticed you guys are already going to be doing some work on that, seeing if those are all up to date, and that will help bring in funds for the city as well as cemetery fees and things like that.
Sherry, my question comes from the time you served on the American Fork City Council. Is there a time you went into the council meeting with a certain decision, but you changed your mind during that council meeting? What was that issue, and why did you change your mind?
I don't know if I changed my mind very often because I am a thorough researcher, and I talk to residents, and I talk to staff, and I do my homework. And so when I go into those meetings, although I do listen to the residents, I've already talked to them ahead of time. And so I kind of feel like I have a heartbeat for, or pulse of what the community is wanting. And so I don't think that I changed my mind that often.
In the general fund, what is the main source of tax revenue? In our city.
Okay, in our city, the main source of tax revenue.
In the funds, the general fund.
Would probably be property taxes. Property taxes, impact fees, fees that we pay every month in our utility bill, those types of things.
Okay, Brittany.
Yeah, Sherry.
Sales tax as well, sorry.
Yeah, I don't know if you recently followed, one of the decisions that we made was regarding Alpine Food Storage, where they had a business, where they were doing some business, and there was a little bit of controversy about the way they were conducting business. What would you have done in that situation as a council member?
I agree with what you all did, that you asked them to find another place to go, because I know when they initially started, it was very popular, but it wasn't as large. And it just got larger as time went on. And the traffic and things like that, it was in a neighborhood, I believe, and so it became a problem. And so I think you asking them you gave them a certain amount of time, and then they had to make sure that they had their business wrapped up in that certain amount of time, and I think that was a good decision.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
John LaFrance is the next one. Is it LaFrance? LaFrance. I'm sorry.
All right, go. Hi, John LaFrance. I've really enjoyed the opportunity to get to know all of you. I've been able to meet with all of you since I applied and learned more, obviously, about the role and responsibility, but also introduce myself. But for the sake of everyone that's in the room and those that might be watching, so John LaFront moved to Highland 3 years ago. We live in the Hidden Oaks community. And I have 4 children. The oldest is a sophomore in high school, and then I have 1 in middle school and 2 elementary school boys, so 2 girls and 2 boys. I got my undergraduate degree from Brigham Young University in advertising and marketing, and my master's degree from the University of Utah in real estate development. I got a graduate certificate in urban planning and a graduate certificate in city and metropolitan planning. I am an entrepreneur, recently won the 40 Under 40 award for Utah Valley, and have created 3 successful businesses in the death care space. So business solutions for funeral homeowners. We came to the Highland Alpine area. My mom moved here when my dad was sick. He was 46 years old and passed away of brain cancer. And he's buried in Alpine Cemetery. He passed away on September 14th, so just 2 days from now. And we love this area and are so grateful to be back here and to be a part of this. And the reason why I'm wanting to get involved in city government and politics at this point in my life is because we found our forever home. We love where we live, and we love the city of Highland. When we talk about safety and how Highland is the safest city in the state, I now have a daughter that is going to be behind wheels next month because she turns 16 on October 6th. Safety's never been more important to me. But there's a lot of issues, and there's a lot of things that I think I can contribute from my experience as a business entrepreneur, but also in my education as well. And I think also my youthfulness, being a millennial, being able to bring that to the council as well. So I'm really looking forward to answering your questions.
Okay. And John, I'll be your first one to ask a question.
Great.
If you received a $1 million grant that you could use anywhere in the city, what would you do with it?
Oh, goodness. We'd throw a big party. Highland Fling would just be massive. Kim would love that, wouldn't you? I am a party planner. I do love a good event, but I don't think we'd spend all $1 million in that one place. You know, it's interesting. I think one of the investments that I would absolutely make is in our mode and method of receiving feedback from the citizens. I think that needs updating. When we're going to go and ask for feedback on major decisions, if we're sending out direct mail, I work in the direct mail space with marketing. I work with seniors. I know that even if I send out mail, I'm going to get 1% back with marketing efforts. And it might be a little bit higher with city efforts, but I think that we could use things like QR codes, email campaigns, text messaging campaigns, social media, and the like. I know that would be a significant investment to do so, but I think that's investing in the future and in modes of communication that will get us data readily so we can make accurate decisions.
In the budget that we approved in June, how large is our general fund budget this year?
How large is the general fund? It's
as close as you can come.
Oh gosh, in the tens of millions. I don't know the exact amount.
Okay.
Hey, one issue that we've addressed recently that's been a little bit difficult is somebody who wanted to open a residential treatment facility in one of our neighborhoods. There are state laws requiring that we adhere to certain requirements for places like that, but also that was really upsetting for neighbors who ran daycares or preschools. How would you think about and vote on a situation like that?
Can you just help me understand the resident facility a little bit more?
Like a treatment center? Alcohol treatment facility.
Okay. And so your question is,
somebody
how would you
wants to
handle
put
that?
one in the middle of a neighborhood. How do you handle that?
Well, I mean, is it legal or is it not based on zoning requirements, right? And if it's a business that's being run in a residential area, I think that there's certain stipulations that need to be there. I also think that the neighborhood needs to be made aware in those types of situations, especially when we're dealing with sensitive needs like drug and alcohol rehabilitation centers. I think the neighbors need to be informed. If they're not informed of that, then that is of the utmost importance as well. And I think that you need to work with that. I think that there's a place for that in a city. There absolutely needs to be. Communication is of the utmost importance, and transparency as well. And so if that does rest upon the city to be the ones to communicate that, then they need to do that clearly and transparently. And I think that they need to get feedback on safety and listen to those concerns and then make the best decision for that specific situation.
As a city council member, you are tasked with being placed on certain committees. Which committees would you want to be put on, and how could you contribute to those committees?
Oh, goodness. There's lots of committees that I'm very interested in. I think probably the one that's the most unique of the group is the Arts Council, and I noticed that that was a responsibility that Sarah had. A little-known fact, my wife knows, not many people know, I was the lead in 2 musicals. I actually went to the same high school as Jay Boffman. His family was also in musical theater, but I was Curly in Oklahoma and Sky Masterson in Guys and Dolls. And additionally, obviously my dad is sensitive in my heart this week, but he was a sculpture major at BYU. And had a full ride scholarship there, and I have his Arabian horses and his bronzes on my bookshelf. And so to pay homage to him and to the arts and how much that has impacted my life, I think the Arts Council specifically is one that I have interest in.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, our next candidate will be John Weaver.
So, you were confronted with a delightful dilemma this evening in choosing a colleague from so many capable and willing people. There are far worse problems to have to wrestle with than this. So previously I sent each of you 2 emails wanting to be respectful of your time and to give you the latitude to review what you wanted to and on your leisure. I hope you took the time to go over those. So professionally, I'm the principal of a little seminary across the street from the American Fork Hospital, adjacent to the Dan Peterson School. And all of our students are diagnosed with multiple severe and profound disabilities. The majority of our students are nonverbal. And again, the majority of our students are in wheelchairs and will likely not ever leave them. So through this experience, I've learned to listen to and come to understand those who don't have a voice. And those who are hurting, and sometimes those who are angry. People who are often overlooked, neglected, and unfortunately sometimes taken advantage of. I've devoted my life to service, and in what feels like a previous life, I served for 8 years on the city council, understand the processes involved and some of the challenges and difficulties. That service was no different. It was offered by way of service to give people a voice, particularly those who may be overlooked or who felt unheard. One of the first things you learn on a city council, particularly, is people generally want 2 things. They want the freedom to do whatever they want to on their own property, and they want to have the ability to tell everyone else what to do on theirs. So helping people temper and moderate those tendencies is a challenge. It requires a lot of work.
The first question for you will come from Scott.
How is the Highland Sea Library funded?
And Scott, I know the answer to every dang other question you asked. Because I did my homework, except for the library. I couldn't tell you.
One thing that we're running into increasingly more in this city is mandates from the state legislature, where it's telling us about affordable housing, what to do with Utah Lake, how to run elections. How or would you push back on the state?
So that goes back to my earlier comment of people only want 2 things, so do governments. So that was an experience that I had in South Salt Lake, that more and more we were having the state legislature or counties really kind of dump on us responsibilities without funding. I think what it takes is clear communication to leadership and to representatives. You've got to work with your locally elected representatives and plead your case and let them know exactly how it will affect your community. So as they go to vote in the legislature, that at least you know that you have representation and a vote there. There's various feelings about lobbyists and how effective they may or may not be. In my heart, I hope they're not very effective, because that would speak to a little bit of a skewed system. So it is a challenge when you are imposed upon by higher authority.
We have a city council election coming up. My question is, why did you decide to run for this position now and not for the election in November?
That's a great question. I really had not anticipated entering public life again. I'd served 8 years, was happy with the two elections or the campaigns that I ran, and felt like I'd contributed. When I heard about this opportunity, I felt like I had some obligation to at least present myself, make myself available, simply because it is a large learning curve. There's a lot to assimilate. There's a lot to get your arms around. And because I have the experience I do, I think I would have more than a running start. And I know that the city is confronting a lot of issues. That there's never a time when they're not. But I think that pace is probably increasing, just looking at the world around us. And I think that as smooth a transition as can be managed was ultimately to the benefit of the city and the citizens.
Okay, since you've been a council member, what makes a good city council member?
The ability to listen, the ability to articulate your perspective, but also be open to the views of others. I think you've got to have a good rapport, obviously, with citizens, and to have your finger on the pulse of what people are thinking and feeling and how they're responding. Sometimes I think, nobody ever gets their way all the time. That wouldn't be healthy for anyone, really. But I believe the ability to, I want to say, negotiate and to look a long ways down the road. A lot of the decisions that we wrestled with were the outcome or the unforeseen consequences of prior decisions that created some challenges for us. So taking the long view, I think, is also very important.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next candidate is Wesley Warren.
You pronounced that correctly. Thank you. Hi, Council. I'm Wesley. You know a lot about me already and the ways I've been involved. I thought I'd maybe just give a quick origin story. 10 years ago, we moved here, my wife and 2 kids at the time. I have 3 boys now. And we moved here for the education system. I have a son with autism, and it was a good place for him. It was a good city. We did research, and it was a good area. A lot of cities in Utah are good. And about 7 years ago, just got a little, felt helpless with just things moving around on a national level, and kind of I turned to local city municipal politics, and quickly found a home. Started attending city council meetings, started to get to know the council and mayor, and a certain future mayor, and serving on boards and starting to communicate with residents and organizing residents. It's infectious, and I think the thing that's most infectious about it is serving. We don't get a lot of chances to serve a lot when you are busy raising kids and running a business and stuff, and it was a good opportunity to serve. Highland turned into a city that was pretty good, and I was happy to move into, to truly something where I feel like my heart lives, and it's the people. It's the people here that I've worked with in organizing, communicating over certain issues, serving on the library board, serving on Parks, Trails, and Open Space Committee, but also getting to know council, working with council. So,
Okay.
Thank you.
Wes, the first question, I think, is there a question? Brittany?
Yes, I was just making sure Helena's getting in okay. Sorry, thank you.
Oh, okay.
Tyler's not here.
No, he's not. So he's going to say Helene, I
It
guess.
usually helps Helene out. Sorry. Hey, Wes.
She's one of our stalwart residents.
She is, so I just wanted to make sure she got a seat
She's just in
safely.
time.
Just in time.
Wesley, the first question will be from Brittany.
All right.
Wes, what is one thing that the council has gotten wrong?
Like,
And you've told me many things over the years, so I feel like it's a fair question.
Not this council, previous council.
A previous council, right?
Yeah.
Right.
that's a good question. I think that something I've been thinking about a lot lately has been this issue with surf soccer. And I can't think of the last time I've gone back and forth so many times on an issue. And it doesn't seem that big, but it is. It is. This is our property. This is, really amazing open space. And the discovery process on this has been really interesting. And talking to, you guys has been really interesting because you also have a discovery process. And it seemed like going into each meeting, I thought a certain way, and I would flip-flop. I know that's probably a bad word in, these halls, but, and I saw you guys switching your minds, which was really great, a really healthy thing. So that's still yet to be determined, but we'll see how you guys stick the landing.
If there was an agenda item that did not represent your own personal beliefs or religion, but the majority of residents are indicating differently, how would you vote?
That's a tough one. No, it's not a tough one. I decided a long time ago, and my wife and even some of you have asked, like, how do you not get so riled up? Like, my wife gets so riled up, hearing me talk about some of these things. And it gets a lot easier when you kind of take yourself out of it and you let the residents of the city kind of hop behind the steering wheel. That's why everything that happens in between the meetings is so important. The communicating and the outreach that the council does, keeping your finger on the pulse of the city is so important, because I think that's what needs to guide our decisions, is listening to the city. And that voice can change. It can change over 20 years and 10 years and 5 years, but I think I would lean heavily into that criteria.
Would you just finish that? You'd lean heavily in how to make a decision?
What was that,
So
Mayor?
I'll actually do a follow-up on hers.
Okay.
So once again, because I don't think I got clear, if you have a personal belief on one thing, but yet maybe the residents, if there's a majority, you understand, feel something, how would you vote on that?
The majority. Yeah. Do you want more? I got a minute. Yeah, I mean, we all take to these issues certain things, certain backgrounds, certain opinions, and I think it's important to let those things inform our decision-making. But I think the biggest component really is, what are the residents saying? I think that would, by and large, inform my decision-making on the council. And it takes a lot of legwork. It takes a lot of getting out there and talking to people. And that happens to be one of the things I've enjoyed the most over the last several years of being involved, is talking to people. I went to a sacrament meeting a couple weeks ago. I'm not LDS. It was a farewell. And afterwards, I had so many people like coming around me, asking me things about the city and stuff. And I felt like I should have been called as a Sunday school teacher. Maybe I'm an honorary one now. Is there a way I can check?
Yeah.
But does that answer it, Mayor? Yeah. Okay. All right,
Okay,
Scott.
Wes, we appreciate your throwing your hat in the ring. So we all just received our property tax notifications from the county, preliminary one. Approximately how much of your property tax that you will pay this year will go to the school district, and how much will go to the city? Just approximate amount.
75% goes to the school district. About 10% comes back to the city. Yeah, I think I'm right on those numbers.
Bingo.
Am I?
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
There were a couple I didn't know, okay? So it could have gone the other way real fast.
You won the prize. Okay.
I mean, you have 40 seconds left. Do you have another one locked and loaded?
Nope, okay.
No.
I think we've all asked different questions, so thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. The next candidate is Elizabeth Rice.
I'm Elizabeth Rice, and I did bring notes, sorry about that, but I emailed each of you a resume, but I have a hard copy if you would like it. Anybody, any takers? No, okay. So I'm a mother of 4, a grandmother of 10. I am a retired school teacher of 33 years where I taught United States history. I operated a very successful student court in Alpine School District and received the Valley Forge Freedom Foundation Award from Valley Forge. Matter of fact, Tyler Barr was one of my justices. So it's interesting how we meet again later in life. My experience, I was 4 years on the Planning Commission, and I was trying to remember how many years on the land use, the open space, but it was just forever, or 2.5 mayors. You can do the math. I still call it the Mountain Ridge Park Foundation that I serve on currently. And I helped write the helicopter ordinance. We had someone that was landing a helicopter in our neighborhood, and so I helped write that. It was, I'm not totally knowledgeable, and it was turned over to the city attorney, and he fine-tuned it and wordsmithed it, I'm sure. I've been a resident of Highland for 25 years. I thought about why I want to do this and why I didn't put in my application to run. A lot of that has to do with money. I'm a widow. But I believe, and like I used to teach my students, city council is where democracy works best. I used to give extra credit for them coming to a city council, sitting for an hour and they had to talk about 3 agenda items back to me. One of the most wonderful quotes that I love is, "All that is necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing." And I believe that applies to women as well.
Sounds good.
Question, hard questions. Let's go.
You talked about helping with open space. One of the issues that we are really facing this upcoming year is our encroachment policy. How would you
what policy again?
Encroachment.
Okay.
So essentially, we have a lot of open space within our city, and certain residents that back up to that, or their land borders that, are building upon that space or grassing over it. How would you address that, and what would you do?
Open space was super hard. It was just a super hard committee to be on because sometimes you make decisions that doesn't please everybody. Encroachment, we did a lot with the orphan properties and got that taken care of. I feel we've got taken care of. It's an interesting thing on encroachment. If they encroach upon it and they are aware of it and the city takes it back, that is the way it is. It's not theirs. If they want to mow it and trim it and take care of it, I don't think I'd have a problem with that. That being said, I would have to listen to all of the facts involved. I don't think you can say, hey, I am set on this one thing. I think you have to listen to what it is and what state law is and all of those other factors and what your opinions are as well. Okay? Mr. Mayor.
So, Elizabeth, you've been here at different council meetings. You've kind of given your voice to things. What are some of those issues that you see, hey, this is something that the city needs to work on, and what would you do about it?
Any issue that...
Give me a couple of issues that, what you see are issues, and then what would you do?
So, one of you asked the question about high-density housing. Is that you, Kim? Yep. Okay. So, when I sat on the Planning Commission, we opened those basement apartments to help alleviate some of that issue. And I've seen some problems develop from that. I think we need to maybe batten down some of that. I have spoken a couple of times about changing some ordinances with fences that have to match the kind of dog you have if you are a amateur breeder. Do you want more? Okay, thank you. Dr. Smith.
Yes. So each month you get a bill from the city. Can you tell me how many main enterprise funds or utility funds you pay for every month, and which of those funds you pay the most for?
Garbage road, water, probably my water. That's all I can come up with, Dr. Smith.
Okay.
Hey, Elizabeth.
Hey.
My question is, what do you think for you would be the hardest part about being on the city council?
I'm retired, and so, I have the time to spend. That being said, midnighters and 2 a.m.s like we did on the Planning Commission years ago would be a little, I might have to have a snack or two or something that might be a little rough. That's not a very good answer. However, I think, I don't know. That is my best answer. I think the late hours might, get to me a bit, maybe. I don't know.
Okay.
Am I done?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Yeah, you went through all four. So. Okay, our next candidate is Ron Campbell.
I have to say, you've got some really good choices here to make. You've got a good problem to have. I'm Ron Campbell. I live on Country Club Drive on the service entrance side of the country club on the east side. Been here for 12 years. Kelly and I have been married for 12 years, and she owned a home in Highland. So I inherited a home when we were married. I've served on the Planning Commission for a number of years and ended up really feeling like I had to resign because I did not have the time that I felt like I needed to put into that role. I, at one point, actually voted on something that I had not studied, and I went home that night and told my wife I can't do that. I should have abstained, and I voted because I trusted some other commissioners on the Planning Commission, and that caused me to really pause and to resign. And then a couple of months ago, I decided to retire from my job, which frees up a lot of my time. And then the very next day, I learned about this opportunity, and I thought I need to step forward and do that. My heart is in service. I've served my entire career. I've been on many boards of directors. I was appointed by 3 different governors for the State Rehabilitation Council, one Democrat, that tells you how far back that goes, Scott Matheson, and 2 Republicans, for 3 3-year terms, and I was chairman of that council for the last 2 terms that I served, not the first one. I was a little young at that point.
Okay, Ron, I'll have your first question.
Okay.
What is the most important thing for the city to do right now? Build new homes, build more commercial, or what?
I think it's to bring in some retail, specifically some fine dining. We're the fast food kingdom in Highland right now, and I believe that's problematic. I'd like to see us have some better options. I think our tax dollars are going to the Olive Garden in American Fork and other places. I only mention that because they serve alcohol, and alcohol is one of the issues, of course, in bringing in fine dining. So yes, it is bringing in I think the Highland Mains project is fantastic, and I hope we can get some good restaurants in there.
Ron, we appreciate your service for the city. How many culinary water wells do we have?
We have 6. We have
Close.
6. Is it not 6?
I always thought it was 5. Do we have 6?
I think,
We have 5 that we use for drinking water and 3 that we use for pressurized irrigation.
Well, right, I'm talking about, yeah, okay.
Okay.
so the answer is 5 or 8.
Well, I really was anticipating I wouldn't be able to answer your question, and my response was going to be,
You were close.
if I'm on the council, I will know more about it than you will at some point, because I will be working full-time as a council member because I'm retired, and I know that you're a busy man. So.
Ron, we recently had an issue that came to the Planning Commission and then it came to us, and it basically came down to a builder who was wanting to build 1 inch more over a property line than he should have. So that's kind of common for a decision that we have to make, where it's something that is
1 inch.
It was literally 1 inch. So when you run into something like that, where you have a conflict between what somebody wants to do and what the actual city code says, how do you decide what to do or when to make a change to the code?
Well, the 1 inch would go to someone else, and that someone else would be part of that decision. If it's city property, that's one consideration, and we'd probably allow that. If it's 1 inch over to somebody else's property, there would have to be a reasonable understanding. The law of the reasonable person hopefully would apply, and some accommodation could be made, and they could come to an agreement. But it is a tough issue. But it does have to be resolved between where does that 1 inch come from?
Hi, Ron.
Yeah.
This one is on tax policies. What is your position on tax policies, and how do you plan to balance the city's budget while meeting the needs of residents?
The tax policies, I really have a large learning curve to learn more about, and that's one of the first things I want to do is to probably spend a lot of time with Scott, because he's the king of the budget, and with staff. But the balance comes in the expectation of what does the city provide. And there always comes with a cost, and that cost does have to be funded. Hopefully we've done all we can as far as opportunities for state funds, federal funds, any other funds that may be available for projects. Overall, I believe that our tax system in Utah is fairly stable and consistent, and I don't see the need for a lot of changes at this point.
Okay. We appreciate you being here, Ron. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next candidate is Allie Carson.
Hi guys, Allie Carlson. I am originally from Provo, grew up on Grandview, have been in Highland for 10 years now. We had a house off of 6800 and now we're behind Mountain Ridge. I have 4 children in 4.5 years. They're really close. 2 in Freedom and 2 in Mountain Ridge. Both of our homes I helped or fully remodeled, held the cabinets up. My very favorite thing is to have a giant project in the morning and work as hard as I possibly can and clean it up and be done by night. I love finishing things. We love Highland. I love everything about it. I love the big lots. I love the safety. We made a point to live here in Highland. I think that something that I can bring to the city council is I'm very empathetic. I love to listen to people. I love to hear their point of views. And I actually feel what they're feeling with the alcohol stuff. When people came up, I felt both things, and I've talked to all our neighbors, and some of my thoughts on it have changed. And I think as a city council person, that is what we have to do, is listen, and then not take our point of view, but listen and try really hard to represent the majority of the people. And that's what I would try to do, is listen, try to understand and love them, and then make them feel like they have a voice.
Okay, the first person for you, Ally, is Scott.
Me?
Yep.
Okay. Ally, thanks for applying. I was thinking it was Brittany, but anyhow, can you tell me the difference between R140 zoning and R120 zoning?
I think it has to do with, I would need to also learn this from you. Oh man. I think it has to do with businesses and homes. That would be what I would think, but I would have to, like many others, listen to you and apply myself and learn what those zones are. Let's go.
Hi, Ally. Nice to meet you. So I think one of the hardest things about this position is normally we have kind of a long campaign season where you have time to learn about issues and things. What specific things would you do to get up to speed on the issues the council is facing right now?
I have been listening to the city councils at home and talking to people around me and people at the dentist office and different places about the different things that you guys are talking about. I would have to talk to you guys. I would want to know what you guys are dealing with and how the city feels. I would just have to apply myself and learn what's going on.
You mentioned that you like to start a project and make sure it gets finished. What is one project in Highland that you would like to contribute to and to finish?
Oh man, I mean, the things that I feel like I bring to the table is that I'm a mother and my children are using the facilities. My boys fish every day at Highland Glen from morning to night. We live behind the Mountain Ridge Park, so I'm invested in that. Something I wish we had, and the majority of mothers that I talk to wish we had, was a rec center. We're using the AF Rec Center, and I wish so badly we could find funding, find people to donate, and have a rec center. So I would love to push that.
Okay. Ally, you mentioned you've been listening to the city council meetings. You're aware there's probably been an issue with what's called the Alpine Highway fence, where for many years the city said that they own the fence, but it's come to find out that the residents own the fence. What would you do to the residents are saying, hey, help us put in a new fence? What's your thoughts on that? How would you recommend walking through that process?
First of all, something I love about you guys in particular is that you guys are listening to the people. I love that in the cemetery, you guys are worried about changing whatever's there now to a beautiful building that people should maybe love more, but you don't know that. And they may love what's already there. And the same with the cul-de-sac. Like, yes, a cul-de-sac would be beautiful in that area and you would be taking some of the people's property, but I love that you aren't making that decision for them. With that fence, I would say we talk to them, see what they want, and then maybe split cost, or probably split cost so that we have a say on what fence gets put along that whole area.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our last candidate is Patrick Springer.
Last one. This is exciting. Well, first of all, thank you very much to City Council, Mayor, and of course staff for all you do to maintain and make Highland City better. Shortly after moving into Highland in the early 2000s, I was at a rodeo in Bryce Canyon. And as the entertainer came up the steps, I made some silly comment under my breath that I didn't know if he would even hear. He did, and his response was to put the mic in my phone and say, "Where are you from?" And I immediately had a brain cramp. I might experience one today. And I said, "It starts with an H, Heber City." And my wife was sitting there, "What are you talking about?" And the medical residents, "Oh, you guys live in Heber City?" And we don't. So why do I bring it up? Because the city was just an H. The majority of people live in a location, and then there's a city where that location is. And there's a concept in real estate called the principle of conformity, meaning that we kind of tie in with those around us, and it spills over into city government, that we tie into the neighboring cities. And every once in a while, the city does something unique and special, and they stand out. And when you're in that city, you kind of know it. It's a different vibe. I'm a fan of that. And I think it comes about by innovative thinking, thinking outside the box, and doing things that sometimes are a little challenging. A couple of examples in Highland are maintaining Highland Glen. It's a treasure, right? And the new construction on our Mountain Ridge Park. And with that, I'm open to questions.
Okay, Brittany, you're first.
Yes, hi, nice
Hi.
to see you. Can you tell me how you respond when you get angry emails or people who are approaching you angry? Not that that happens, it's totally
Oh, no.
hypothetical.
No, that's a good question. No one's ever angry here, but if they were, I think I would have to try. We all have emotions, and we all have, our personal issues, whatever that is. But I think in those situations, you try to put those aside. If it's an email, if it's a text, then breathe. If it's in person, breathe, but you have limited time. And you try to take into account as much as possible why this person is expressing themselves that way. And respond accordingly.
Okay. You mentioned something about, in your story, that one item that makes a city stand out. What do you think makes Highland stand out amongst all the other cities, and how do you want to maintain that?
I'm going to be really candid. I don't think Highland really stands out too well. In other words, a foreigner entering the city, the only reason they know that they're entering Highland is because of a sign. And once they're in it, they probably don't really know. It's a great location. But I think that making a city stands out, there's unique things, like I said, Highland Glen, the park and stuff, and that's great for residents. But I've been in a few cities, and maybe you have too, where maybe the streetlights changed. Maybe things stood out, maybe the signage changed a little bit. And you have kind of this different vibe going on. I think it starts with little things. We have limited budget. I know you're going to get me on a gotcha, but we have limited budget, and we do what we can to make it stand out through efforts that people volunteer for, Highland Fling, little things, and we keep trying to improve it and make it stand out more and more and more.
Okay. Okay, mine's going to be about zoning. What zoning do you see the city to continue to do, and what zoning would you recommend that we don't do?
Highland was built on large lots. Now we're paying the price for large lots. You look at Lehigh City, about 25% of their revenue comes from sales tax. Ours, about 10%. Don't use that one as a gotcha.
We're going to talk about that.
But I think that we are now paying the price for those large lots. And I think that we really need to take a hard look at zoning without forgetting our heritage. I think a city can have both, but I think it has to be carefully planned. To be candid, if I would have been on the city council when we were doing the property south of Lone Peak, I wouldn't have been in favor of what's happening there now.
That to me was a perfect property for what is, as you see in other cities, a real destination type multi-use facility with luxury homes, with multifamily, with residence, and with commercial office space.
I was going to ask you something about sales tax, because just real quick, sales tax is the main source of revenue for our general fund. 3/4 of it comes from other cities, 1/4 comes from our direct sales tax. But since you brought up the Lone Peak property, I know a lot about that, the property south. Who owned that property, and where did the money go when that property was sold?
I'm aware that it was annexed, if I remember, if I recall correctly. It was annexed property that we got, is that?
No, it's
correct?
always been part of Highland.
What's that?
It's always been part of Highland.
Oh,
So
okay.
who owned that property, and where did the funds go when it was sold?
I'm sorry, I can't answer that.
Okay. I'm just going to answer quick. So that was state property owned by the USDC, and the state had a master plan for that. And there was a big compromise, that's where there's high density there. So it'd been nice to have luxury homes there, but it was never passed through the state legislature. So we need to educate more on that.
Yeah, and to clarify really quick, since I have 26 seconds left, I said I wouldn't have been, but I also would have, just like all of your opinions have changed over time and they continue to change, I'm sure that in doing my research and more information, I'm just seeing what's happened there, so, yeah.
Yeah, and the funds went to fund a sustainability fund for the disabled in the state. So it's kind of a special thing.
Yeah.
And, I support what you said, but we know why that happened, so.
Okay. We appreciate you. Thank you very much. So at this time, this will be our first round of eliminations, or I guess to move on. And so with that, the council members, you have a ballot in front of you. What we're going to do is this is our voting matrix. This is going to be our first round of voting. What I'm going to ask you to do is to choose 2 individuals to move on to the next round. And then I'd recommend you fold them, and then we'll give them to Stephanie and Rob, and they will then let us know the results. We have 2 individuals over there to kind of verify that what's going on. Or you have our recorder who's over the elections. We got our city attorney that is not here. That's their job to make sure there's things. So if you got your votes down.
Okay.
But I want to tell you that's kind of going. Thank you for everyone that's shown up tonight. We appreciate you being willing to put forth your name. The council will be deciding at the end of the meeting kind of what to do with it, if there's another vacancy, how to move forward with that vacancy. While they're counting the ballots, do we want to take a small break?
Just a small break.
If we take a 5-minute break?
We will also be reprinting ballots with just the final
Okay, so we're going to take a 5-minute break and we'll come back and then we'll have the reveal.
I just want to let you know also that all of Scott's questions, I don't think I knew any of them before I got on council, so don't feel bad about that.
Just FYI, I know that there's some things about taxes. Highland is actually one of the lowest tax cities in all of Utah County. I guess you got to be careful about making instant answers. So.
Right. So I appreciate all of you applying, and I'm sorry if I was kind of obnoxious with those questions, but the biggest thing we do is budget.
They're hard.
Yeah,
I'm glad that you
but
asked them.
they were basic questions, so.
Get ready, your second round, the questions will start getting a little harder. So. see, is Brittany here?
Oh, she went.
We'll just give one more second, and we'd like to have Brittany. Then we'll announce who moves on. Make a little suspense. There is 6 candidates moving on. So, I was wondering about it. Okay, here are the following names that will move on to the first round of voting. Sherry Kramer, John LaFront, John Weaver, Wesley Warren, Elizabeth Rice, and Ron Campbell. We appreciate all the others who did come and put forth their name. I know it's not always easy to come and make comments and be prepared. There's some good questions you got. I appreciate everything. Please be aware, we do have some other committees. We'd love to have you get involved with the city. Like I mentioned, there'll probably be 1 or 2 appointments that will be coming up on the Planning Commission. The Arts Council could always use some help. We have also the Library Board, our Parks, and the Fling Committee. We'd love to have any of you kind of jump and get involved, and maybe we'll see you in the next election. We will be talking at the end of the meeting about how the appointment or replacement of Council Member Tim Ball will be happening. But with that, the order for those who will come up. Now this next round, I'm just going to take some liberties right now. You have 2 minutes to answer. If you answer and that council person wants to ask a follow-up question to that you're still underneath that 2 minutes, you can have a little bit of dialogue during that time, but it's still just a 2-minute with that one council member with their question or follow-up question. The first person to come up will be Sherry Kramer. And I'm going to go ahead and we're going to have Brittany.
Mayor, don't we reverse the order?
Oh, I'm sorry. We will go reverse order. I'm sorry. Instead of going, it will be Ron Campbell will be the first to come up. And Brittany, if it's okay, I will start with you.
Yes.
Hi, Ron. So can you explain to me a little bit about your decision-making process and if you have decisions made before you get into a meeting, or how swayed you are by what happens during a meeting?
Okay, I appreciate that. I'm a believer that our government is a republic, and as so, we are representatives of the people. That doesn't always mean, and the south of Lone Peak property is a good example of it. A lot of people were against that higher density, 600 and whatever it was. But the reality is, had we not, when I was on the Planning Commission, gone for that, it could have been annexed into American Fork, and we'd end up with 1,200 or 1,300 homes in there. So the decision has to be one that may not be the popular one. My decision-making process would be to study the matter as fully and as deeply as I possibly can get, and have public input, and that needs to be heard. And I'll give you a real quick example of the alcohol, the elephant in the room kind of topic. Personally, I personally feel that liberty is important. I fought a war in Vietnam for 4 years, and I fought for freedom and liberty, and I believe that liberty is important, and giving people the choice to have alcohol is important to me personally. But as a council member, I've got to look at the results of the survey. I've got to look at the community. I've got to look at the values in the community. And whether I apply what I personally believe to that, or whether it is influenced and possibly could change. And I could vote against it if, say the survey comes in 75-25, 75 saying that they don't want alcohol. I would have to look at that very carefully, and I would probably pull back my position.
Hi, Ron.
Hi. Lakai, let's say Lakai.
This is a question I've already asked, but I'm very curious. We have several committees that council have the opportunity to serve on. Which ones would you want to serve on, and what could you contribute to that committee? I
was actually on the board for Art City theater down in Springville for a number of years. I love art, so the Art Council would be high on my list. And I've had that experience. We were involved in fundraising and some least fun things to do, but it was a great opportunity to get involved in the art side of our world.
You have 2 minutes, so you can follow up on others or have a dialogue.
Yep.
Oh, I can't follow up. Okay, a minute. One of the things that we do, we get our agenda and packet on Thursday, and it has all the items that are going to be at the city council meeting for our Tuesday night. What would you do to prepare for that meeting?
Well, Erin's going to be sick of talking to me because I'm going to be talking to her quite a bit. I want staff view, and that's not just Erin. It's the finance people, budget questions that come up. I want to know their perspective. I don't want them to tell me how to vote. I want to know their perspective. And that has to do with, there's always pros and cons. Tell me what your perception of the pros are. Tell me what your perceptions of the cons are, and then make a decision based on that.
30 seconds here.
Yeah.
One last question. Mountain Ridge Park. We are working to get that finished. What do you think are ways in which we can fundraise to be able to finish it off?
We'll get that $1 million that was asked about before. Although the first part of that would probably have to go into maintenance on the parks, because I think we're shy on that. I would have to look at the different options. I would literally need to talk to the finance people to find out what our options are.
Okay, Ron, I'd like to have a little conversation about some finances with you.
Okay.
What would ever make your decision to pull a bond out here in the city, where you pull a bond to put the city further in debt?
Well, a bond, I mean, I would love it for something like to help us with what I know we have an issue with keeping our parks maintained budget-wise. But that's not the purpose of it. The purpose is going to be for some capital. And it's like any business, when you have a capital expense, you expend it out over years. This is similar to that in the fact that you've got a bond, and it would be the need for a new, I don't know how the fire stations, there's a lot I would have to learn, and I'll tell Scott that right now when it comes to the budget. I don't know how the fire stations are funded, but we should have a fire station within 5 minutes of every home. I would hope that that's an objective from the safety side of our city.
So what is something else, how would you help the city be on stronger financial footings? What are some things that you could do, or what do you see how you could bring? Well,
more tax revenue, sales tax, and bringing in some finer dining, Lakai restaurant. We probably wouldn't get Lakai, but just some higher end restaurants that would build the tax base. 10% is just not.
So when you bring up, what percentage of the sales tax then comes to the Highland City? So if they have $1 million in sales, how much do we actually generate back?
10%, is that right? I don't.
So our sales tax is 10%?
What's that?
Our sales tax.
Oh no, what our sales tax is?
So if they generated $1 million at a restaurant, you want the
Oh, I'm sorry.
You want a restaurant. That's what would save us.
Yes.
So what percentage of the sales tax does the city actually get?
I'm going to guess 3 to 3.5%, but I don't know that for sure.
So for every $1 million, the city will get 11,000, just to kind of help it. We go 1,000.
1%.
Yeah,
so what is it? 1?
So
over 1.
So
1%.
So 1% will come back in sales tax. The other 1,000 comes to our parks tax.
Okay.
So thank you.
Very good.
So I'm not going to ask a budget question.
Okay.
Okay. So you've been on the planning commission. You'd like to be on the city council.
Yes.
One of the problems we have in the city is we spend a lot of money on parks, playgrounds, and then we have to deal with a lot of vandalism. And Cedar Hills has been dealing with that in their Harvey park over there. What are some suggestions you would make to help us prevent vandalism?
Vandalism is proportional to a city's availability, if you will. And when you've got things that aren't properly lit, I would hope that we would have lighting. I've learned very early in my life that the best lighting for your home, outside lighting, is the best insurance you have against vandalism in your home, is to have that. If you go by my home, it's very well lit. So lighting would be one of the possibilities that you could look at. I think the more pristine that a park is, and I may be wrong, but I would hope that it would be less likely to be vandalized. So I want our parks to be maintained and in as good a shape as we could have them be in.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think all council, I think we've had the opportunity. Thank you, Ron.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Well, don't we get a little more time?
Oh, no,
Oh, yeah.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
One more minute. One more minute.
I'm sorry, I didn't say go ahead. Yeah, you got more time to dialogue. I'm sorry. We'll get it.
What is your opinion about xeriscaping, and what areas of the city would you xeriscape?
All the park strips today. And xeriscaping, I believe, has got to be part of our future. And it may or may not be popular, but I would hope that our citizens would recognize that new developments as they come in, that maybe we allocate a certain percentage that would be xeriscapes beyond the park strip. But certainly the park strip. I'm a very strong believer in xeriscaping when we have a water problem and 5 wells instead of 6. If we had 6, we wouldn't have as big a problem. With 5 wells, and then we have the water that is supplemented with our wells at times. The culinary water has to supplement.
You want to do one follow-up, because I did take some things.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Our next candidate is Elizabeth Rice. The first question will come from Kim.
You mentioned that you were on Planning Commission before. Is there a decision that you made on Planning Commission that you look at now in the future and think it was not a good decision for Highland?
When I was on the Planning Commission, the issue of expanding 9600 North into a 3-lane highway became an issue with UDOT. We were on their radar. And it was really difficult to go to the citizens and tell them they're going to take 7 to 14 feet out of your property on 9600 North. So it was difficult to do, but I don't regret it. And I think, you know, with all of the information that comes from the staff, from Aaron, from each of you, you're knowledgeable, and my research, I don't think that you can look back on a decision and say that was really bad. I don't believe in that. I think that you have to go forward, and I don't think we did a bad decision. You know, Planning Commission, you can only recommend, the council makes the decision in the long run. That's my answer.
My next question is, how would you, if you were on council and disagreed with somebody else on council, how would you deal with that? And what is your viewpoint on having differing opinions than somebody else?
I always listen to others. I probably would get really quiet and then, you know, maybe dive a little bit deeper into them in a private council or private conversation as to why they voted that way or why their decision was that way. But I think that, you know, calm heads prevail.
Thank you.
Okay. Elizabeth, you've been here at different council meetings. You've heard a lot of different things. I want to have a discussion about a number of topics that we've had going on. Share with me your input about what you do with the surf soccer agreement.
You know, I listened to that. I've never, to me, it's like a business coming in. And I think they should have a contract, if that's what the council decides. I think they should be responsible for any damages they do. But at the same time, I think that you can restrict that contract and say, well, you can have it during this time, if that's what you want. I think it's a compromise situation, perhaps. But I don't know if I would just have my blinders on and just say, okay, this part, this is yours. I would struggle with that unless other facts came to light.
Okay, we're now going to move on to encroachments. The city has recently sent out letters to those who have encroached upon city-owned property.
Okay.
Some residents have not responded. It's now time to maybe go legal. Would you take the residents to court?
I don't really believe anybody wins in court. However, we dealt with encroachments when I was on the Planning Commission. I don't, and that's why the Open Space Committee was formed, as I recall. You can correct me on that, but that's what I remember. I believe that before I would go to court, if the encroachment is not gainful for the city, then you go in and you rip it up and you do what you need to do. And then if they disagree or if there's a problem, then you go to court. But you try every means before that to not land yourself in court.
Okay, last 15 seconds, alcohol.
On the alcohol, I have been here for 25 years. Matter of fact, in 1972, when I first moved back to Utah. Can I keep going?
You got 5 seconds.
Okay. The short answer is I want to see what the residents of Highlands say. I would struggle saying yes to it unless I know the businesses that are coming in, if they really are high end. That's all.
This is my question. You've been on the Planning Commission. One of the things that has been disturbing to me, and I've lived here in Highland almost 35 years, so I'm almost a Highlander. But in that time, we've developed some big highways, commuting highways through Highland, North County, and it's kind of the adage, if you build it, they'll come. Got really busy. Timpanogos Highway. I think those major highways have taken away from Highland in a way. I mean, they provide good transportation, but I think they've taken away from the feel of Highland that Mr. Springer talked about earlier. What would you do on the City Council to try to preserve this rural feeling or bedroom community feeling that a lot of people who have been here for years would like to preserve?
In dealing with the roads and the traffic.
Roads and density.
And density. Highland looks the way it looks because we've kept that R140 policy as much as we can. Traffic is always a big problem. Anytime you start to have a lot of residents move in, like they did in Saratoga Springs is a mess. It's an absolute mess. They didn't plan for it. Yeah, you go there on a Saturday, you can't make it through. So somewhere there has got to be a lot of research done. You're going to have roads. You're going to have the management of traffic. That being said, I don't think I should be a thoroughfare for traffic from Cedar Hills. So either Cedar Hills has to kick in with some of this, cost or planning. That's my answer. I think it would just take a lot of research on my part to see how that would change it and see how that's going to affect, a specific area.
Okay, so I'm going to follow up on that same thing.
Okay.
So we recently had a vote. Alpine City wanted to extend North County Boulevard along 4800 West up into the roundabout in their city and make it a 5-lane or 4-lane highway at least, similar to North County. We voted it down because of the impact on our residents in that area of the city. Also, they are planning a subdivision up north of Viewpoint and want to run the traffic from that subdivision in the east end of Alpine through Highland and Viewpoint, which is not, it's a residential road. How would you work with Alpine to resolve those issues?
You have 30 seconds. So
I think you need to sit down and really go over everything. Like I said before, I don't think Highland should be a thoroughfare for other communities to get through.
You keep going, you have a little bit of time.
Okay. I would really work with them, research with them, be on a committee with them to make sure they understand. A 4-lane highway, I think you did right on that. That's just not, the more lanes, the faster the traffic. That's all there is to it.
Thank you. Elizabeth, the reason I gave it is because to kind of get to that question, I had to have some information, so it took up a lot of that time, of that 2 minutes.
Okay. Oops. Is that okay?
And I think it's
all right.
Brittany.
Yeah, so we've talked a lot tonight about, apparently it's not an elephant in the room anymore because we talked about the alcohol quite a bit. But I have a question about that. So a lot of people have said that that is a decision the council shouldn't make and that we should get input from residents. I've had other people say, but you were elected to make decisions for us. So in your mind, how do you know what kinds of decisions that you should make as a council member versus what kinds of decisions you should get feedback from residents for?
How would I know how to differentiate? Maybe.
Yeah, how would you differentiate? How would you make that decision?
And you're specifically talking about the alcohol?
No, I'm talking generally your decision-making process.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I think I'm a really good researcher, and I have the time to go out and look and talk with people and visit with people. In my neighborhood, I live around people whose parents owned their land prior to them building a home on their land. And it's really interesting to sit down and talk with them and explain some of the things and some of the problems that Highland faces. But I do a lot of research. I weigh everything. I would talk to each of you, and I would talk to Aaron. I would talk to the city attorney. If that involved it, I would look at state statute. I think there's a whole bunch of things you have to take into account when you make a decision. I don't think anything can be just, hey, this is what I'm going to do, and this is where I'm going to go, because I think when you come to meetings, you learn a lot. Okay.
Thank you.
Do you have any follow-up?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next candidate is Wesley Warren, with the first question coming from myself. You ready, Wes? We're going to kind of get into zoning. If you could change one of the residential codes in Highland, what would it be?
It might be, well, I go back and forth on R130 because I think I'm more of a fan of high density housing than most people are, only because I think it's necessary for a thriving town center, city center, and I think that same concept can and should exist in other places in the city. We don't have to just have the one city center. One thing that I like about Highland that I would love to see better done in Highland is a more walkable retail experience. Not just walking to buy something, but also walking around while I'm there. And I think that parsing up the density into, and this might not be a problem with it, R120, R130, and R140 leaves not enough room for creatively using high density housing.
Okay, you mentioned about high density housing, so where do you see it coming in Highland?
Sorry, what was that word?
You mentioned you see different density maybe in different areas. Where would you see that in Highland? Well, as you look across the city, where should that go?
I mean, there are many more places for it to go. There was the Boyer project, and that's...
Other than what's approved right now. I mean, okay, what would you do with the Longhorn Field? Give me your vision of Longhorn.
That's a good example. I really like that Applegate, the mixed use development that went there. It seemed, by the hardware store. I think it was a really appropriate mix of housing, commercial, and professional development. And I think we could use, because that's what the in the town center, the high-density housing that went in there, wasn't it originally supposed to be some commercial in there, some retail? I think that would have really improved it. And so I think doing something that looks more like that at the Longhorn Field would be good.
Okay, next question will be Scott.
The city owns 1.66 acres just east of the police station in that area, just across the road. There's been talk over the years of building a civic center, library, an area for senior citizens and different things. Would you support a project like that? And if so, how would you fund it in Highland's limited budget?
I would. I'm familiar with all the different plans. I remember sitting down with Rod Mann, and he's a kid in a candy shop with that kind of stuff, and he was really excited about it. And it's taken a lot of different forms, and I would support it. And I think it can happen. I think we're learning a lot with building out and fundraising for the Mountain Ridge Park. One of the reasons I'm eager to get more involved is to be able to do some of those fundraising initiatives in an official capacity. It's sort of hard to know how far to go, when to pull back, what to suggest, what not to, as just a regular citizen. And I think there's a lot of fundraising opportunities for a place like that, a lot of sponsorship areas, naming rights, not to mention just being able to rent out the facility and have it be a revenue source. It might need to be bonded. I don't think that all debt is necessarily bad debt. If you wisely leverage a bond, it could be a really good thing. So, yeah, that's what I'd do.
Okay, do I get a follow-up question? Okay, there's been a little mention tonight. Would you support fundraising and building a recreation center with swimming pools in Highland?
I would. I feel like this is like a hot topic. I didn't know that a swimming component would be, but I would, yeah. And not just because I have 2 kids in swim clubs, but I'm a marathon runner. I was. My knees just can't take it anymore. And so I'm starting to bike and I'm starting to swim, and I feel like that is an activity that fits the complexion of Highland City. There's a lot of older residents and a lot of new residents, and that's kind of this bridge kind of activity that kids love. My 85-year-old in-laws love it, so I would, yeah.
Can I one brief question? If you're on council, will you wear socks?
I'm wearing socks. They're no-show socks.
I'm just teasing.
That's a good question.
Hey, Brittany.
That's a good question. It's hard
I sat so that you could not see my socks.
follow up with that. What are you doing to your feet, Mayor?
He's going to gift me his socks. It's so nice.
Oh, shoot. Wes, you've been around for a lot of conversations, and what I'm interested in, we've talked a lot this last year about taxes versus fees, especially in light of that Utah Supreme Court decision. Scott brought up earlier a transportation fee and public safety fee. What's your opinion about fees versus property taxes and the way that we currently fund things here in the city?
I think a lot, obviously we're all holding our breath for that decision. A lot of, the outcome is rides on that. My view on taxes and fees is probably a lot different than some people. So if we're talking about my personal view, I'm a fan of those things. It's what makes the city tick. It's what makes the city grow. We have to fund it. We have to fund it somehow. And it takes a village. And I know that it's a tough ask, especially when it's not an ask, when it's a requirement. But I think a fee is a unique way for a city to go about that. I mean, each city has its own unique issues, its own unique struggles and needs, but also some ways of funding important things like this it's going to change from city to city. And so that's a real tough one. I think legally, I think the legal part of it needs to motivate the decision-making on whether to do that, but I like a good fee.
How much time do we have?
You still got 45 seconds.
Okay, so talking about those fees, so currently we have a Lone Peak public safety fee. It doesn't fund all of the costs for public safety. We take some of that out of our general fund. Do you think that is an appropriate way to handle that expense, or do you think it needs to be all separated out?
I think it's an appropriate, it gets sticky when it's the, the Lone Peak Safety, not Highland, and when it's kind of shared resources. But I don't see any problem supplementing it from the general fund. One thing I admire is just how scrupulous you are. I mean, each line of that budget is scrutinized in these meetings. And so we're very, very responsible fiscally. And it's a huge component of the city. I mean, that's really important. And it seems like an appropriate appropriation for general funds.
Wes, you have been at almost all the city council meetings since as far back as I can remember, very involved in committees. Why did you decide not to run for city council, but run for this position, not in an election?
There's a two-part answer. First part, personal reasons. It didn't seem like, and it was a sad decision, that it was going to be in the stars for me this cycle. And with the last month or two, the complexion of things at home just kind of changed and got better. And it was kind of a bummer. And I think the other reason is it took, for 5 or 6 years, I was really content to just be involved as a resident. And the council is very accessible, and the whole process is amazing. And we have people from Highland that come to our meetings, just nothing but complimentary about how things are run here. And I felt like my access to the process was sufficient. But it gets to a point where it's like, crap or get off the pot, right? And I felt a couple years ago that running for city office is going to be something that I'm going to end up doing. And I'm really sad I didn't get a chance to this cycle. But I see a clear path forward now, whether it's now or a couple years from now.
One last question. Your neighborhood is one of those neighborhoods that has come with some safety and traffic issues and wanting to put in speed bumps. Mm-hmm. How do you deal with that? And do you make them a priority over other safety issues? And how do you deal with your neighbors?
I wouldn't prioritize it over anything that's, more needing. I know the corner and I know the street. And I feel like the measures that have been taken just as a community, our community, have been really effective. Put in little reflector signs, little reminders, and I feel like it's been working. I was talking to a couple of my friends right on that corner a couple days ago, and I asked them how it worked because they got a new sign. And they've been really happy the last few weeks. So I feel like internally handling those things can be a lot more effective.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Wes.
Thank you.
I think you've caught on that Wes has been, I think for the last 3-4 years, involved. He's been very involved. He's on our Parks Committee, so we appreciate you, Wes. Okay, our next candidate to come up will be John Weaver. And the first question will be Scott.
7.25%.
So this is a follow-up question to when I asked you about funding for the library, and probably you looked that up. So what percent, the library is funded by a dedicated property tax. There are 3 communities in the county that are funded that way. What percent of the property tax that comes to Highland goes to the library, and I don't expect you to know that exactly, but would you increase that for the library? Is the library important in a community? How would you go about funding it?
I think the trends are unfortunately moving further and further away from hard copy print. But I've always loved a good book. And in terms of increase in funding, I think we'd have to really carefully look at the actual usage and the need, and what we could do to maybe promote reading. Reading is, well, I spent 2 years in a country where the literacy rate was about 10%, and it completely hobbles people. And then to be literate, but not to read, is really no different. So I think encouraging reading and encouraging being engaged intellectually to expanding and growing and learning is vital. The format that takes, I don't know is as crucial, even though I have my preferences. Like I said, I like a good book. I like to underline to make notes and other things. You forgot to start the clock.
Oh, well, the timing's not going.
Well, that's good, because I have another question.
So to answer the question, I think we would really look at what the usage really is. You know, if we're benefiting our citizens by having the library and by offering those services, then by all means, let's find a way to improve that. If they're looking at other formats and if they're getting their materials elsewhere and otherwise, then maybe that's not a service that would be beneficial to the citizens to the degree that we might hope.
Okay, good. Appreciate your comments. So approximately, how much bonded city debt do we have? We're making a payment this month, and do you know what year all our debt will be paid off that we currently have?
I believe we'll be free of debt in '25. I think that it's about 5% of the budget, and that's actually something that really stood out to me. Very few communities have that kind of discipline, which speaks highly, I think. There's, in my opinion, there's too much a tendency towards play today, pay tomorrow, and I think that there are more responsible ways to go about it. So hats off for I think managing things very responsibly.
Right, our debt will be paid off in 2027.
27, okay.
On this schedule.
So it's 1.8 million per year, though, correct?
Yeah, it's 1.2, I think.
1.2.
Yeah. So what two areas, we got 26 seconds left, do we have bonded debt in? There are two funds.
I don't know that I could tell you that off the top of my head.
Okay, so it's buildings, this building.
Yeah, I would imagine.
And parks. So that's kind of an important thing. So we're pretty proud of the fact that we've almost paid off all of our debt, because that frees up $1 million a year to spend on other things.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Which is why I'd be very cautious about bonding issues. Right. You'd have to really see some benefit to warrant that.
Yeah, so on the city council, we make two kinds of decisions, administrative and legislative. What is your understanding of the difference of those two types of decisions?
Legislative decisions really deal with the citizenry and the rules that they're expected to abide by, the law of the land, if you will. Administrative decisions, in my understanding, are dealing with the functionality of the city and its organs and how things are structured that way.
Okay. And my next question would be, when you have issues that impact yourself or your neighbors, how do you kind of separate that from the larger city issues? Because in a small city like Highland, a lot of times you know the people who are impacted by your decisions.
Yeah. How do I separate the two?
Yeah. How do you separate kind of that emotional aspect of the people that you know who are affected by those decisions?
Well, I find that there are kind of three approaches to life. One is pure selfishness, which doesn't really work very well or get people very far. The other is one of reciprocity, of mutual respect. And then I want to say that higher level is one of love, of a self-sacrificing nature. So in those decisions, I think you could ask people kind of where they are. In other words, if we all approach it from a position of selfishness, then there's going to be conflict. It's unavoidable. If we approach it with a perspective of reciprocity, then there's give and take. And if we approach it on a next level up, then I think people are willing to forego some of their personal preferences and do so for the greater good, or the good of even specific individuals.
Thank you.
Hi, John. What is your favorite park in Highland City?
My favorite park in Highland City. Well, based on what I see, our new, as of yet unfinished park, every time I drive by it, I get excited about all the potential that lies there. We've been looking longingly at the pickleball courts and some of the other amenities. We have grandchildren, and that great big slide just looks so appealing. So I really am impressed with the scale and what seems to be a very well thought out plan. So I can hardly wait to get in there and enjoy it.
And then how have you been involved in Highland in the community, and what achievements have you been able to accomplish here in Highland?
In Highland. So that would limit me to a 3-year window. Let's see. The sale of multiple residences in order to facilitate the combining of households with our mother-in-law. We're taking care of my wife's mother currently, and we found a home that met our needs beautifully. We couldn't be happier with where we are and what the community offers. We've really been getting our own house in order, candidly. So we've got our property now to the point where there are no weeds that haven't been addressed. There's no bare ground. We've taken out a park strip and put in xeriscaping, and we do all the work ourselves. We think it's wholesome. So it's really been a function of getting our own house in order and positioning ourselves to contribute more. There have been some ways we've contributed with our local church and some things, but I don't know that this is the forum.
Okay. So at the Highland Fling, what's your favorite event?
The art show.
The art show, okay. Now I'm going to move a little bit to zoning. Tell me one residential zone that you think the city should make sure they keep, and then what residential zone should they get rid of?
Could you say that again?
What residential zone should the city make sure they keep, and what residential zone should they look at changing or get rid of?
I really enjoy the R40. I think that that's what primarily gives Highland its character. Larger lot sizes, I think, make a big difference. If you want to maintain a little bit of a rural feel, then you're going to have to maintain the ability for people to have large animals, which R40 does accommodate. I don't know that I would, off the cuff, eliminate in any existing zoning. I think that we would absolutely need to look at, candidly, my bigger concern, in order to maintain the character of Highland, I think that we're going to have to work very hard on economic development and then identify corridors where that is appropriate and to where we can be self-sufficient financially based off of the commerce that's taking place in Highland.
So you just mentioned about commerce. Where do you see commercial going in Highland?
I think the most logical place is along our major corridors. It's all about, if you're talking retail, it's all about traffic. You've got to have cars and you've got to have bodies, and that would be our major corridors.
So share with me when you mean corridor. We have up by Macy's. Do you mean going down towards the Smiths, just all those areas along all SR92?
Not the entire area.
Would you put retail along that whole area?
I wouldn't put it along the whole area. I think what you can do is intersperse it. In other words, have economic nodes. Usually it seems to be more successful in conjunction with intersections, just from a practical standpoint. Developers like more access, more people.
Thank you. I think we're done. So thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next one is John LaFront. And that, Brittany, you'll have the first question.
Are you purposely showing us that you're wearing socks?
I went up a little bit. These are my Las Vegas socks. I just
Sure.
came back from Vegas today, so.
Yeah, have you had a chance to look at our general plan? And if so, what is something in the general plan that you think should be updated or changed?
Yes, I have looked at the general plan. It's a lengthy document, so I haven't read it completely thoroughly. But just knowing that as I was going through it, it was written in 2008, I believe. And that was the year after my wife and I got married. And so we've looked at everything that has transpired in the world in that amount of time. And then when you look at the city of Highland and the amount of growth that we've had, there's, I think, a lot that needs to be changed within it and amended. It's not a complete overhaul of that general plan. The biggest thing that I think I pay attention to is the discussions that we've had with zoning and housing needs. And specifically, I focus on the senior population and empty nesters and what needs we have for them.
Thank you. Can I ask another question?
Sure.
So over the last year or so, what do you think is the hardest decision that the city council has had to make? It's been a big year.
Yes. Well, there's two issues, obviously, that have come, and I think one of them is that seemed controversial, right, was the encroachment on the properties. It was the 25% that we're paying the additional fee for the parks that was there. And that was a decision that I imagine was tremendously difficult for the council to do, and now it's what happens next in that period. Your question was, what were the two? And
Yeah, or whatever you can come up with, 1, 2, 3.
yeah, and then I think the other one is the one that you have currently. And I think you've started that process, which the next step was to gather more feedback. And I think that that's super important. You shouldn't make a decision until we have that feedback, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
My question for you is, we have an election coming up here in November. Why did you decide not to run, and why are you now running for this position?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Number one, this is an interesting opportunity to be able to present, and I think it's brought a lot of interesting candidates that maybe wouldn't have done so otherwise. And I think that's really a neat part of the process. For me, I mentioned I have 3 businesses that I run, and it was a really amazing experience for me. I was just down at the National Funeral Directors Association conference in Las Vegas. All 3 of my businesses were exhibiting, and over the course of the last 6 months, I have been able to put in place executive vice presidents that are running operations. And I was able to leave that conference early with peace truly in my heart and my mind going, they've got it covered. And I still sit as CEO of those organizations, but I just have the one person that reports up to me. And that freed up my time. I don't know why I did that. But now I think serendipitously, I think it allowed me to have more time to be able to do that. 6 months ago, that, or several months ago would not have been possible.
What is your favorite park in Highland?
It is a coin toss probably between Highland Glen, because it is in my backyard, and it is the crown jewel of Highland without question. Fun fact, when we moved to Highland, we didn't know that it was there until after we moved in, and our neighbor gave us a key to go through their gate to get there. And so all of our walks are in Highland Glen, and I see with the density coming in, I want to make sure that that stays preserved. There's going to be a lot of people there, but there's also a lot of extra land that I think we could do some amazing things so that more people could enjoy it. But I'm really excited about the Mountain Ridge Park because of pickleball. All 4 of my children play, my wife and I play, and that, even though we have courts across the street from where we live, those look epic, and we're really excited about it.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Okay, John, would you approve, well, tell me about Rec Center. Yes or no for Highland?
Oh gosh, I love a good rec center. The cities that I have been in before that have a rec center, I've enjoyed. The city that I grew up in, Issaquah, Washington, they built a giant rec center, and it was a place that we did youth parties and events, and the youth council was all super actively involved in. And then also, I think just for a general health and wellness, having gathering places for the community to see friends and neighbors is so important. I think, historically, Highland has been a very largely LDS population. Those dynamics are changing. And to me, you have LDS populations that can gather at wards and chapels, but something that can be open for all members of the community. I know the wards and chapels are, but I think that it's the city's responsibility to be able to provide that. So I would be super excited about it. I don't know a lot of the details of what that would entail.
Would you support a bond to pull us right for the rec center?
I wouldn't gut punch say that yes today, but it's something that I would be interested in exploring further.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next question is, a lot of your neighbors live by the Alpine fence situation we're talking about. Tell me how you'd work to resolve that issue of the Alpine fence.
The Alpine fence, I'm trying to remember the details of the Alpine fence.
Alpine Highway fence.
The Alpine Highway fence, the city said that we owned it, the city owned it.
Yeah.
We found out they owned it.
Oh, yeah,
It's now
yeah.
time to replace it.
Yeah. We got to make it right? I think between the two parties, it's one of those things, because I think it was a good 10 plus years and nobody really knew. It was miscommunicated to them, misinterpreted back. And so really it comes down to seeking to understand one another and then coming up with the right solution. I think that the city needs to do their part in that as well, but dialogue needs to happen. And then we need to do whatever we can to make it right.
Okay, you said you live just north of the Highland Glen Park. During the last year, we've been resurfacing trails, put in a new playground. What sort of things would you like to see added to the Highland Glen Park, and how would you propose that we fund them?
So a couple things that I've just noticed recently. Highland Glen is so beautiful. I don't know what we can do about this, but the E. coli situation this summer was something that all of a sudden we had red flags going. I don't know that we want to play, obviously, in the water situation that's there. Yet it's such a beautiful place to fish, to paddleboard, to do the things that you do there. So I don't know what can be done about the water situation, but I definitely think that body of water is beautiful, and we should do whatever we can to preserve that. Other things, I love the spaces that are carved out for people to picnic. I see families that do that on Sundays and on the weekends, and they gather together and they share food, and I think that that's wonderful. But as you get into the outskirts of it, it's a little rough and a little scary, to be honest, I think at different times of the day. So I don't know if it's a lighting issue or maintenance issue that comes with that. Were you asking about funding too, if we were to do those things? Yeah, so obviously you have fees and you have bonds, taxation, there's a lot of different things that we could creatively do. I just need to assess the situation and get creative with how to make the funds happen so that we can continue to beautify that area and preserve it.
Okay. So we have an extensive trail system in Highland.
Yeah.
How should we fund improving those trails?
I mean, it's the same thing. There's only so many tools that we have in our toolbox, and there's some that are going to work better than others depending on the amount that we have, and I think we just have to get creative with it depending on how urgent is the need and how big of a priority is it for the city and the residents.
Thanks. Can I ask one last quick question? So if you're on the council, do I get discount on funerals?
I'll tell you where to go, yeah.
Those of us that are older?
Yeah. I do have a free grief support platform, forgrief.com. So on the grief side, I can help you, but I don't own any funerals. Yeah.
Thank you for coming forth.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We have our last candidate, Sherry Kramer, and the first question will come from Kim.
Hi, Sherry. My question for you is, you mentioned that one of the reasons you moved to Highland was for the large lots, big houses, big open space, trails, parks. I guess my question for you is, how do we fulfill the needs of those senior citizens who are wanting to stay within our city but unable to maintain those large lots and large houses? And also at the same time, how do we also fulfill the needs of the young married couples who want to live in the same city as their family?
Okay, I like that question because when the Boyers first came to town, we were having public meetings. There were many seniors that came and said, we love Highland. We don't want to take care of our yards anymore, but we want to stay. and options are limited. And so Boyers said they were going to be putting in some senior housing. I don't know if that was finalized. I hope they did. I think that that's something, when you look at the general plan again and revise that you need to pick an area that you want that to be, because I think it is very important. I love the area over by the city center that has the duplexes and the grassy areas, open spaces around it. That's a great area, but I don't know if it is specifically for seniors. So I think whatever we decide to do, whatever you decide to do as a city, it needs to be specifically for seniors so that you aren't getting other people in there taking the spots that those seniors might want. And then could you tell me what the second part was again?
Oh, yes. How can we help essentially those young married couples that want to stay within our city, stay by their families, but are able to afford to live here?
Okay.
For an extra 30 seconds, so go ahead.
Okay, so have them live in your basement. My kids have come back many times to live in my basement so they can save for a house. My neighbors have done the same thing. I think that's one of the solutions. And then we've got the housing up by the Lone Peak area as well that are probably relatively cheaper than some of the other places.
Thank you.
Okay, since you're a city council member down in American Fork, you were involved in the rec center. Would you approve a rec center in Highland?
At this point, knowing what our limited finances are, I would have to say no, unless we put out a survey and the citizens were very much in favor of that, so overwhelmingly that they would be willing to take on a bond, because that would be probably one of the only ways we could finance that.
So as you speak about bonds, would you be in favor of taking out bonds on what?
I don't like to be in debt. I love that you guys are going to be paid off in 2027. It would have to be something very, very wanted by the residents in order to do that, in my opinion.
Okay, we're now going to move to Longhorn. So over here with the Passions, tell me what you envision going in there on the Longhorn property.
The R140, definitely. And possibly that could be one of the areas for senior housing as well, maybe surrounded by the R140, possibly. Just depend on what the residents want, what the council wants.
So I'm going to follow up also on the library. I know I'm jumping around. On the library, it has a dedicated tax. Are you in favor of the dedicated tax to the library?
Yes.
Okay, would you, if they needed extra funds, would you be willing to give them more funding above that dedicated tax?
Potentially, if the residents were in favor of that.
So how would you find out if the residents are in favor of it?
A survey, ask around, get input, put something in the newsletter letting people know that this was possibly an option and see what they would like to do.
In your things, you mentioned you're an advocate. What does an advocate mean to you? And you're a resident advocate. What does that mean?
Resident advocate means that you get involved, that you serve, that you get to know your neighbors, that you find out what the issues are, and if they are important to you, you find out if it's important to other people too. And if it is, you get involved and you get in there and you work and you get other people involved.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I get questions now. Okay. So I appreciate you've attended many city council meetings. You've been there and advocating different things. If you looked over the city, and you've lived here for some years now, what do you think is the number one thing that you would like us to focus on if you had a wish list?
I think our water is very important. And at one of the meetings, I think Mr. Spencer was talking about the new well that we had that is double the depth of the old one. And I think that's great. And I think we also need to work on the water pressure, because I know that that's an issue in my neighborhood. And as we're hitting build out, we need to make sure we have enough water and enough pressure and those types of things so that we can provide those when we get the development and when we get to build out. So probably water is the number one priority. And I think the Xeriscape is a great way to get to that point. I liked what Mr. Campbell said about the strips in the new developments. Those definitely need to be xeriscaped. And that can be beautiful. That does not mean xeriscape, by the way. That means a beautiful native plant, different native plants in those areas.
So in the near term, the gravel pit area, which is underneath Viewpoint, will soon be mined out. What would you see being developed in that area, if anything?
Well, that can't come soon enough, in my opinion. And I would love to see it a park, but I love parks. But I know that it would probably be something else if the city doesn't want to fund that. Probably residential, potentially maybe a maintenance building for the city, something like that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Brittany.
Sherry, I want to ask you about two things we haven't talked about yet tonight, which is really impressive. We've talked about almost everything, I feel like. The first one, what is your opinion about fiber for the city? And do you think that that is something the city should take responsibility for or work towards providing for our residents?
Okay, we dealt with fiber in American Fork, and it wasn't a good thing at the time. But that was probably 16 years ago, 15 years ago. We were in debt for a long time. It didn't pay for itself. Dale Gunther was very upset about that. And I didn't think it was a good idea at the time. I know American Fork has gone into that again, and I think it's been successful. But I like that the private sector gets involved in that and takes care of that. I don't know that our city wants to take that on.
My second question is because you mentioned that you had been in the schools quite a bit and involved there. Lately, there's been a lot of conversation about Alpine School District becoming too big. And there was a ballot question in Orem about that. And now there's conversation about if the cities should initiate some kind of a school district split. What is your opinion on the city's involvement in that kind of an issue?
I don't think the city should be involved so much in that. I think that the school district should probably take the lead on that. And I don't know, it is big. Alpine School District is big, and I can understand the Orem residents wanting to split because a lot of their schools and things are already built out and they're not wanting to pay for the new schools. But if we all join together, we're able to get more done and more paid for. So that's a hard question. But I don't think the city needs to be involved in that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, council, you have a hard decision. So
Can we take a minute?
Yeah, go ahead. I don't know if we can talk about amongst each other, can they? I think it's more of a dibble-it, because we're in public. Silent, kind of think on some things.
So first round, vote for one. Is that right?
Rob, is that correct? We just want to make sure. So on this first round, they all just submit one name.
Because there's still one vote for two, but it's vote for
Yeah, but you know,
one.
this one you vote for one name. If during this vote, one person gets 2 votes, they are on city council. Is that my understanding correct?
Correct. If between the 3 council members, one candidate gets 2, that will be the next council member. If there is a tie in some way, we will ask the mayor then to submit a ballot. We will evaluate that.
But if I submit a ballot, it just means that we go to the next round.
We'll go on to the next round, but it'll affect who goes on to that round.
Okay. Give him a minute.
Hard decision.
Good candidates.
It's just break time. Are we allowed to take breaks?
I think we're right here at the vote. Let's go ahead and get the vote done. Okay, I think, does everyone have their vote in? Vote wisely. We will have our city recorder share with us if we have a new council member.
Can't be too hard, there's only 3 votes.
Did they all mark it right?
Mayor, could you fill out a ballot, please?
There's what?
We need the mayor to fill out a ballot.
What do I not, okay. Yeah, this is. Now this just moves them on if we didn't have a complete. How did that? Huh? What that means is there must have been, that means no one got 2 votes.
Oh my gosh.
We had 3 different votes.
3 different votes.
You did not have the same person go forward with this.
It's like city council. We can't agree on anything.
Okay. Voted that that one
Be
person.
4 different
If you guys included the name, so if I put my name, if one of you had that same name, that person will go to the second round. And
So-
let's have the attorney tell us how it works.
We had 3 votes for 3 different candidates. We asked the mayor to then break the tie so we could at least get down to 2 candidates. We have a person who is advancing, and we need to do a coin toss between 2 others. So,
Okay.
it has to be by coin toss by state statute.
We do have this recording on Wendy, make sure you have this. It's the coin toss. We were wondering if it would come
We
down.
ask John Lafrance and Ron Campbell, please come up. You'll watch us toss a coin. We will assign John, you will be heads. Campbell, Ron, you will be tails.
Okay.
I still don't understand.
Please do it here in the open, and so they can all see it. Please do it right here. Can the camera, make sure the camera is, see that no one touches that. We've tried to make sure, we wondered if it was going to come down this one. She's going to let it, you're going to put it in the air, you're letting it go on the ground, no one's touching it, we're not catching it in the air or anything.
So we've got one that's going to progress, but of these 2, there'll be another one of these.
Out of these 2, who is heads?
John is heads, Ron is tails.
So
One of
whatever
these-
that is, then that person will then move to the next round of voting.
We will vote again.
There you go. Moment in history.
You can, how many times can you say you're this close with the coin flip? Okay, here we go.
All right. Tails. All right.
Okay, so that means Ron Campbell moves forward, correct? So now we need to reveal who the other person is that will move forward.
The other person who will move forward is Sherry Kramer.
Okay, so we have, now, we had, I don't know if we had any other time, we don't do another round of questions, it's now
No, it's
votes.
just one more round of voting, and the voting is just between Sherry Kramer and Ron Campbell.
Okay,
We
we
will
need-
print off a new sheet for you to vote on.
So it's between Sherry Kramer and Ron Campbell who will be coming on city council. And so the council, it will be 3 council members now voting, and is whoever gets the 2 names on it, whoever gets the 2 votes is the council person. Don't you love the drama? Today's just been full of drama. I assume, did you print? What did you kind of do? Where'd you print them at?
We have a printer out here, Mayor.
Okay.
That's why I took mine.
We just wanted to make this as suspenseful as possible.
After this is done, we will then discuss how we go forth with the next replacement of Councilmember Tim Ball. I'd always heard there was that option of the coin flip before. I didn't think we did. You know, I always wondered. I didn't think we were really going to come down to it.
Stephanie can check that one off of her recorder bucket list.
I did hear that Stephanie had practiced how to throw the coin. She said she'd practiced several times. If any of you, I appreciate Jeremy grabbing that. If you're interested in filling out an application and saying, hey, the different committees you'd be interested in serving on, we'd appreciate that. We'd love to have you get involved and stay involved.
And we really appreciate everyone that applied too. It's great. Great people.
Yeah, we've had great candidates. Okay. No. Okay, council, you need now choose between Sherry Kramer and Ron Campbell. Okay, I think all three have voted, correct? Okay, we will now have a new council member as they open this up.
Or another coin toss. I'm just kidding.
No, there's no coin toss because there's only three of you. Do we have our new council member?
It looks like our new council member is going to be Ron Campbell.
Okay, Ron Campbell, welcome to the City Council. We'll be excited to work with you. And we know I've worked with Ron also on the Planning Commission. So that, with that, we had discussed that maybe Ron's not sworn in, but we need to now make a decision how to move forward with the replacement of Councilmember Tim Ball with the new information about Tim not being a resident of Highland at this time. Council, let me kind of just go through a little bit what the situation, what would be. Now we got a big picture. And so depending on how the election comes out, the election in November currently has three candidates with Doug Courtney, Kim Radella, and Brittany Bills, and there are three openings. Now, we gotta be careful. If there's a write-in candidate, they have till the 18th of September to put their name forward. If not, there will not be an election. That means those three candidates would automatically go in. With that, Councilmember Tim Ball has time left on his council seat till the end of December of 2023, so for 3 months. By state code, we are to put forth a name within 30 days to replace Councilmember Tim Ball. So, as guys, today was a really emotional day. When you say, it was like we had no idea what was going to be coming about until, like I said, about 12:12 today. And when we started looking at the different nuances going on, it just kept evolving on us and what was going to happen. And I appreciate Doug. I don't know if you know, Doug has withdrew his name tonight. One of the questions happened, there was a really big, and I appreciate Tim. Last night I called Tim and said the question that we had for Doug was if Doug was a candidate tonight, Doug would be a strong candidate. You need to understand that. Doug had put his name forward. Doug's a strong candidate. Doug has been coming to council meetings. You've heard about it a number. Doug is qualified. And as I could talk to Doug, I said, Doug, you have it. Doug Courtney has an opportunity to move forward between an election, but also he could be voted in tonight, and he definitely would have the 2 years and 3 months. And as I talked to Doug, when I'm saying all the calls, we're calling the council, so Doug made a decision to go ahead and withdraw his name, so he was not one of the candidates tonight. We don't know if Doug or who it could be out of those three, or if there's a new write-in. We'll just wait and see on that. But with that, we have 30 days to make a replacement of Councilmember Tim Ball. Council, what would you like to do? And I'm going to have you, Ron, chime in on this. This is now going to be a time for you to come and chime in. Come sit up here. He's not sworn in. It's just going to be his opinion only. But Ron's going to share with this, what do we do? State code says we have 30 days. If we do not fulfill that vacancy, we will get a notice from this Lieutenant Governor that we have 30 days and you're in violation of state code. That would then take us to about the 1st of November. If we do not put a council member in place by that first part of November, the Lieutenant Governor is supposed to then go appoint someone from Highland to come in. So we have a decision to make, and how fast the fastest we believe we could do it is the October 3rd City Council meeting to bring a new council member on what would the council like to do?
You could do a special meeting before that, but that would be the first meeting they would be eligible to vote at.
We have to give, Rob, is it a minimum of 14 days notice? Like how we sent that notice out that all of you responded to, we have to send a notice out on that behalf.
But remember, this is a special meeting, right? It wasn't on our regularly scheduled things. We just added a meeting, so you could do that as well if you wanted to.
Right, so to Aaron's point, we have to do a 14-day notice, and we have to have some deadline by which candidates can submit their names, just like happened with this process. We did a longer one, I think, for this one. We could, as long as you meet the minimum 14 days notice of the decision, and again, to Aaron's point, we can either hold October 3rd as a regular meeting, we could hold a special meeting, we can go out 30 days. It's, as long as you tell us what you want to do, we can give a 14-day notice.
So let's go through what notices we're sending to the residents. You probably all received a notice about alcohol. We're planning to have a meeting next Monday on that. It's an informational meeting. Then we're getting a survey, so we're going to be hitting, we have that, and we're going to have a survey hit the residents. What we're saying is we need to do another mailer to the residents. They're going to probably be tired of this. To be honest, in between there, we were hoping to send a fundraiser thing out about Mountaineers Park. We had a lot. Council, what would you like to do? Would you like to move this as fast as we can, or what? Is there questions?
Well, I'd like to move it as fast as we can, but I think you've already established a process, and I think you have to follow it.
Okay.
So I would do the same thing we've just done.
We don't have to do a postcard. That was something extra we did because we really wanted people to know. You don't have to do that. There's a normal process that Stephanie has to follow from a public noticing standpoint. It does not have to include a postcard.
What, council, let's get some information. I mean, I'm sure there might be some not candidates, but...
I'm in agreement with Scott, but no postcard. I mean...
So you just put it on the public notices we need to do, to put that out there. So what about...
I don't know. What do you think, Scott?
Well, I agree with that, and I think a lot of the fine people up here, they want to apply again. I think we've already got their resumes and things. I think, I don't think, do they need to pay another $35?
That is a question that...
Yes, this is a new seat, so they really need to go through the whole process again.
Now, be aware, if you apply, this spot is only until December of this year, 2023. It's 3 months, just FYI.
Well, actually, you're on the council until they swear the new guy in.
Yeah, that's true, until the
January.
first part of January.
Yeah.
But you could have fun in some of these meetings, or probably 3 meetings. As you laugh, and you could always say you're on city council. It's something you put on your resume, something you can put on if you decide to run that you've been on council. I mean,
gives you a taste.
Council, so what I'm hearing, how soon would you like to do it within 14 days and then hold a special meeting? Tomorrow's the 13th, we have the 14th. You could do it towards the end of October, or end of September, if you want to get it so they're already sworn in, or you could do it at the very beginning of a meeting, that October 3rd meeting.
Do it as quick as possible. Let them have as much fun as they can.
I would do it as quick as possible. I'm out of town the last week in September, though, so I would maybe favor taking action on
the
first meeting in October rather than
would be, if we do that, we would then select them. They would then be sworn in that same meeting, and they'd be here as a council meeting on the 3rd, right?
Yep.
So perhaps the plan would be, we would get a notice out asking potential candidates to have their names submitted by next Tuesday, a week from today. That gives it exactly kind of 14 days from that day till the October 3rd meeting. And then we would have vote at the very beginning of that meeting.
Or we could hold a work session if we needed to at the first of that meeting, depending on how many people apply.
Depending on how many candidates we get.
Okay, so let's go through what you're saying. The candidates would have to have their names in by when?
I was thinking October 19th, or September 19th.
That's only 1 week.
Correct. This is us being as fast as possible. We could, theoretically, we could push it out, say, September 26th. And then that gives us just 1 week to kind of finalize the process. And we'll just put out the notice at the same time. 2 weeks to get the names in, and then we'll have 1 week for staff to finalize the process for the council to decide. Would you prefer to do that?
You want to do it on the 3rd?
Just as an FYI, I'm not crucial to this process, as was seen tonight, whereas Stephanie and Rob are, but I will not be here on the October 3rd meeting. I can call in, but I'm at a conference.
Yeah, and I think on that 3rd, I think that would be, just hearing that Councilmember Bills will be gone that last week. Does anyone else have conflicts? Will they all be here on the 3rd? Okay. Okay, with that, let's go ahead and go towards, is everyone okay with October 3rd?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Rob, because it's a new process, I mean, we've vetted a lot of people, heard a lot of people. Why couldn't we just choose the second place person?
You can, but you cannot tonight. I mean, essentially, you have to have a new submission. It is a new vacancy process. We have to follow the notice process. Now, second place, or whoever else, anyone who was here tonight, could submit their names again.
And go through the process.
We could abbreviate the interview process if it's the same people that we have applied, because the council has interviewed many of them. That would be something we could add on, depending on who submits their name, to the, perhaps as the first item on the October 3rd agenda, to decide how to interview, depending on what names we have come in, and then appointment process afterward.
All on the 3rd, right?
All on the 3rd.
Are we locked into the voting system that was decided in this?
We are locked in the ballot process.
The ballot process.
Not locked into. That was requested by the council.
The one that I would recommend that we consider is to have first, second, and third choices. And the first choice gets 3 points. The second choice gets 2 points. The third choice gets 1 point. Then whoever has the highest number of points wins.
Is that ranked choice voting?
First, second, third.
Yes.
I don't like ranked choice voting.
Yeah, we did that on different boards of directors to bring in new board members.
Okay. So council, we're saying the 3rd, that will be our next, so we have a community meeting on the 18th. Actually, we have Lone Peak Public Safety tomorrow morning. So just FYI, 7:30 a.m., those are Lone Peak Public Safety.
And we have city council in the week.
Oh, that's right.
On the 19th.
On the 19th.
Yeah.
That's Lone Peak Public Safety. It's 3.
So is the council, would you like the deadline to be the 19th or the 26th, or another date in between there for name submission?
If you are wanting to change the process based on who submits, I would encourage a sooner rather than later deadline, so that you can give us feedback to how you want to change it, and staff can write it up. Have some time for that.
We probably need that, even before we have council meeting next Tuesday, we need to probably have that in place tonight, just so we can kind of have a deadline to go out. You want the 26th, which is 1 week before the night, or do you want it to be like the 22nd?
The deadline?
The deadline for
names.
I thought we had to have it open for 14 days. I guess I thought there was a 14-day notice we had to do. So I thought you had to do a 14-day notice.
If there's a question, we should err on that side.
Rob, is there any input on that?
Sorry, what was the question? I was going to...
Do we have to have it open for 14 days? I thought we had to do a 14-day notice.
The notice of the meeting has to be up for 14 days. The name submission does not have to be open for 14 days.
So I would recommend either the 22nd, that, but you have to put, if we just put it up on, we have the 22nd, it gives then a 14 days.
Do you mean the 21st, Mayor, so that it's a Thursday?
Yeah, it'd be the Thursday, that 21st. Or you could do it Monday, the 25th.
And then we'd still vote or choose someone on October 3rd.
October 3rd.
I don't think it matters a lot.
No. What would staff recommend?
We would recommend earlier, so that you could then, we would send you on the 21st, here's everybody who, who submitted, based on the number or the candidates. Do you want to change anything about the process? And if so, what? So that staff has time to write that up to get it to you for the agenda on the 3rd.
Okay. So the 21st, you guys okay with the 21st?
Is that the deadline for submission?
The deadline for submission.
I'm okay with it.
And then so that we would choose a council member on October 3rd.
I'm in agreement.
Okay. Sounds good. I think that's what we're going to move forward with. So with that, I'll take a motion to go ahead and adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Scott, second by Kim. All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
I saw 3 council members, yes.
Again, thanks to everyone.